All right. We ready to roll?
Give me 1 minute. It seems to be doing its thing on my end anyway. And I believe we are up and running. Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Town of Scarborough Planning Board meeting, Monday, October 5th, 2020. A couple quick notes as we get started. This is a remote meeting using Zoom. People can access this meeting by going to the Planning Board's webpage. And for viewing only, click on the YouTube link. To attend the board meeting virtually, you can click on the Zoom link. The board recommends written public comment prior to the upcoming meeting as time, given the remote nature of the conferences. Directions for doing this can be found on the Planning Board's webpage. Attendees are muted and they must raise their hand to be called on during the public comment parts of the agenda. Please only raise your hand once when it's time for public comment and not during presentation or board deliberation. Chair happens to drop off, which is known to happen from time to time. Due to technical difficulties, the vice chair shall start running the meeting until the chair returns. There is our disclaimer for the evening. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Jay, you got us hooked up again? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Do the roll call. Rachel Hendrickson.
Here.
Rachel is here. I can see her.
Yeah, sorry. I said it was muted. I said here.
Thanks.
Okay.
Jennifer Ladd. Healy.
Yeah.
Rick Meinking.
Here.
Rick Duperry.
Here.
Robin Saunders. Absent. And Nick McGee here. With Robin out this evening, Rick Duperry, you are going to be moving from first alternate as a voting member. Another housekeeping item, item number 11, Sonoshin Realty LLC Plate Plan Amendment Review for 9 US Route 1 Assessors Map U50 Lot 18. That has been tabled at the applicant's request. Next item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes for September 14th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'm going to call the roll. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Richard Duperry.
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. Sure that is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 5 tonight is a consent item. Hayloft Apartments LLC requests a subdivision amendment review for Lot 3 of the Town Center residential neighborhood within the Downs, Assessors Map R52 Lot 3. Okay.
Sure. As you just noted, this is brought to you as a consent item, as the staff sees this as a very de minimis change. As you'll see in the memo, there was, when Hayloft was approved, there were multiple buildings, and one of the buildings was identified as having a total of 10 units. 8 of those units were identified as 2-bedroom and 2 as 1-bedroom. However, that appears to have been a Scrivener's error, and they were all intended to be 2-bedroom. As staff looked at the changes, there are no changes to the building, and the parking standards were still met. So seeing that there are ostensibly no other changes to the site, we thought this might be considered as such, a consent item, that is. So that's what I have for you, and we do have a motion drafted when you're prepared for that.
Thanks, Jay. Applicant doesn't have anything, I imagine?
Oh, we don't.
Okay.
Thanks.
With that, Jay, I think we'll take the motion.
I believe you can see that at this point.
Thank you. I move to approve the project titled First Amendment Subdivision, Hayloft Apartments, proposed by Hayloft Apartments LLC, as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer, dated 9/17/20, with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposed First Amendment amended subdivision plan includes a minor amendment to update Building 1 with the correct bedroom count. Final subdivision plan approved by the planning board in August 2020 included 2 one-bedroom apartments and 8 two-bedroom apartments. The proposed subdivision amendment includes 10 two-bedroom apartments within building 1. All of the elements within the subdivision remain the same. The subdivision is located within lot 3 of the town center residential neighborhood subdivision within the Downs and is further identified on the town of Scarborough tax maps, map R52 lot 3. Subdivision is located within the Crossroads Plan Development CPD zoning district. Condition 1, the existing conditions from the August 24th, 2020 planning board meeting subdivision approval will remain in effect. That is the motion.
Second.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion from the board? Okay, I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor, Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Rick Duperi,
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on tonight's agenda is Crossroad Holdings LLC and Center Street Partners LLC request a preliminary subdivision review for the Town Center North subdivision within the Downs Assessors Map R52, lots 4 and 6. Okay.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an item that the board may remember as it was granted a master plan approval back in April of this year for, as you just noted, Town Center North. This is really, we're starting to move into the mixed commercial development area of the Downs. And so we have a proposed subdivision that consists of 6 lots with an extended Scarborough Downs Road, a new public street called Center Street that will intersect with Higas Parkway and ultimately connect out to the Payne Road connection. So just by way of background, as I noted, this received master plan approval back in April. The applicant submitted a pre-application review back in August and then resubmitted, and this was actually tabled on your last agenda. So it's really getting before you for the first time. One of the sort of threshold questions that staff has in our memo is for the board to determine master plan consistency, and the question being around, there are some additional lands that have been folded into the subdivision plan. And so one of the provisions of the plan development process is that the planning board find any subsequent subdivisions or site plans consistent with the master plan. And so we really want to be sure that the board is comfortable that those additional lands don't have any, that the board feels that this remains consistent with that overall approval. And I know in talking with the chair, wanted to sort of take up that question before we moved into the other elements. And so I think with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so before we get into the nitty gritty of this, I think there's that first hurdle, as Jay had mentioned, that we have to overcome as a board, whether or not this is consistent with the master plan or if it should be amended. And so before we get into anything further, I think the board needs to discuss that and maybe let Rocky and Dan have a chance just to kind of just focus on that little portion. If we can clear that hurdle, we'll have Jay, we'll turn it back over to Jay to go into some of the other main elements that we need to be discussing on this project. But for that first question, a lot of that discussion afterwards is really for not at the moment. So Dan and Dan, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Jay, for the introduction. I did have I'm going to share my screen here. A pretty lengthy presentation planned, but if we first want to talk about the additional land that's in the Higas Parkway district first, I'm happy to talk about that, explain it, the geography to the planning board and the reasons for those areas being part of this application. So let me find the best plan that illustrates that. Let's see, I think I'm going to work off of this one, and bear with me as I let's see. Just trying to find the pointer. If everybody can see my hand, I'll just use my hand as the pointer. So these are the limits of the preliminary subdivision, as Jay indicated. We've been through a handful of rounds of staff review, peer review, given the time that's gone by. So what's proposed is largely within the crossroads zone, but there are three kind of distinct areas that are included in the project that are in the Higas Parkway district. And there are also lands controlled by co-applicants. And the co-applicants are involved principally given the wax project that's we're excited about and why this subdivision is moving forward at this time in particular. So if you can see block A here, this shape lot is shown as lot 4, if that's clear to the board. The majority of this lot is within the Crossroads district, and this is where phase 1 of the office anchor is going to be located. So there would be an office building on this lot, the WEX office. We're finalizing a lease as we speak. The parking for the WEX building will be within the Downs property. But given the lay of the land and land area needs, there'll be a stormwater BMP area here, shown as a gravel wetland too. That green area is being designed here. Some of it is in the Crossroads zone, some of it is in the Higas Parkway district. So that's one reason, key reason, and sort of a design consistency between the master plan and this Higas Parkway district area. And it's designed intentionally to be right along this stream buffer. So this is a stream buffer that goes from the Crossroads district into the Higas Parkway district to Willowdale Brook. So this area is designed entirely kind of consistent with the master plan for the Downs. And there's also an area here that's planned for future expansion. So part of the agreement with the office end user is to have room for future expansion because they want to locate in the Downs in the town of Scarborough, and they want to grow over time potentially and have room for growth. So that is the intent of the upland area. And if this is a faint line here, hopefully you can see it. That is the zone line, and it's also the partnership line with the partners in the project. So that's the intent here, is to include that in a design very consistent with the master plan and consistent with the layout of our project. So that's what's happening on this particular parcel or area that's zoned Higas Parkway. It should also be noted that by designing this area to be tied in with the Downs can minimize natural resource impacts because otherwise, there's a stream here. So stream crossings, et cetera, would be needed to get into this area of upland. We're potentially avoiding that with that component. The other two pieces that are much smaller in size is there's a small area right here. Most of it is in a stream protection area. My smoke detector is going off. Hopefully that's resolved quickly. I apologize. For the mute button.
No, his smoke detector's going off and Bacon's.
Actually thought it was my
Detectors work pretty well at my house.
house, Dan.
All right, so my 12-year-old got that under control. I apologize. The other two areas, very small areas, are really mostly in natural resource areas, setbacks to the streams. One's here and one's here. There's a small amount of upland here and here that wasn't part of the master plan that's in the Higas Parkway district that would be essentially kind of squaring off the upland areas shown as Lot 5 and Lot 1. And so from a design consistency standpoint, these areas are tied in with the uplands and development area of the downs, and their natural resource areas are also going to be tied in from a conservation standpoint. There's a stream corridor here we're showing as open space and buffering, same as here. So I apologize for the smoke detector, and I'll stop my presentation. Happy to answer questions of the board.
Thanks, Dan.
Could I jump in, Dan, before you finish? Rocky here. I don't know if
Sure, yeah.
you hear me. I just wanted to clarify. I'm not sure I heard you say that. Basically, what happened is when we started working on this piece, there were some pieces of land that were on our side, if you will, of a stream or of a wetland area that really made sense to go with the Downs property and not with the Dongle property. They were separated by, natural topography. And so it made sense to add those little pieces to this piece. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, thanks, Rocky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So board, what all we have to do here is just make sure that we're comfortable with the additional lands. And then Jay, if you could clarify, if we're fine adding this into, do they need to go back and amend anything in order to officially?
No, so what the standard sort of says is that the planning board needs to find that the subdivision or site plan is consistent with the master plan. So if you feel that the additional lands are generally consistent with that master plan and haven't had any substantive change, then I think the board can feel as though you've made that finding. And so I think that's really the question. And if the board finds that based on this application, no, I don't believe there needs to be an amendment to the master plan because you would have found it consistent.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the board members here if they feel that it's consistent. Roger, you want to kick it off? You're on mute, Roger.
I think I'll listen to what other board members say, but I don't see where there's any inconsistency, or any problem. Maybe there is something that I'm just not aware of. The only question I would have, just for my own clarification, so lots 5 and 1, 5, and 6, are they basically owned by other people besides Brisbara and Michelle?
No,
Pardon me?
I apologize. I didn't present it as well as I could have under the beeping in the background. So lot 5 is here. If you can see the hand.
Yeah.
A very small area is outside the master plan. I'm drawing it with the hand, but it's a small triangular piece that is a minority area of lot 5.
Okay.
The same is true on lot 1. There's a very small area on lot 1. The majority is in the master plan area. And then there's also a minority area, but it's larger in lot 4. That's designed primarily to be integral with the site plan that'll come before you in the future for the WEX building.
Okay, those are all Donegal lands?
They're all part of the Dongle parcel.
Okay.
And that's owned by a partner on the WEX deal, the WEX project.
Okay, sure. Okay, like I said, I don't see any inconsistency, so unless other board members come up with something.
All right, thanks, Roger. Rachel?
Yeah, I don't see any inconsistencies, and I appreciate the developers' attempt to keep somebody from crossing over that bridge, that brook area, as by simply adding that onto, I guess, the WEX property. So I have no problems. It's not inconsistent as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Rachel. Jennifer?
Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to think about what those would look like. I guess if they were not part of this, that seems much less cohesive. So, based on the description that you gave, Dan, was very helpful in terms of how you arrived at including those lots. And I do think that that's consistent with my take on the master plan here.
Thanks, Jennifer. Rick DePerry?
Yeah, I think it's consistent. That's fine.
Thanks. Yeah, so hurdle one cleared, Dan. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jay to quickly just go over some of the bigger hits on the main elements that we need to be discussing. Jay?
Yep, thank you. So as I said, this has gone through at least one round of staff review, actually 2 rounds with this having been tabled at the last meeting. And so you have our staff comments, and a couple of the items that we flagged is the applicant has actually just recently submitted a traffic impact study for this parcel about 2 weeks ago. And our traffic peer reviewers are working through that. However, there's a number of items traffic related with the downs that are happening right now, and in consultation and discussion with the applicants, we've really focused a lot of the attention on the interim traffic study that we're going to talk about in another application or two. And so there's obviously still a lot of work to be done in reviewing this traffic study, but our peer reviewers did have an opportunity to review the internal traffic network. And that's really another one of the main comments here from not just our peer review traffic folks, but also public safety, public works, about really understanding the internal network of streets and thinking about traffic calming, thinking about, one of the real challenges with this project, one of the opportunities with this project, I should say, is the fact that we're really, having a lot of activity happen in a small area and trying to have the network work for multiple modes of transportation. So it's really finding that balancing act between moving the vehicles through the site, but also the bike and ped and other folks. And so continuing to work through those type of elements. We had a pretty good conversation with staff and the Downs team within the last 2 to 3 weeks. I don't quite recall exactly when it was, where we started to talk about some of those items. So I'm sure the applicants will talk about what their thinking is moving forward in that regards. I think one of the other questions that we have at this time is, as part of this subdivision, being sure we really understand, understandably, we have a very large parcel. The applicants, this subdivision provides for a portion of Center Street. That's the street that connects from Higas Parkway and starts to head east across the property, or north across the property, and ultimately will connect up to Payne Road. But there's sort of a disconnect of the proposed right-of-way that's part of this subdivision that is proposed to remain as a private way and connects up to Payne Road. So we really want to have a very good, firm understanding of those details, because that portion of the private way is really integral to the interplay of traffic and the movement of traffic between. We're really starting to see good cross connection between this portion of the development, the Innovation District, and Payne Road. So really honing in on those details as we move forward. There's also been, want to be sure that the board's comfortable in terms of what's being designed for placemaking, because that's a key component to any subdivision process in the Crossroads district. So sort of thinking about what is it that's going to provide those common sort of core elements that do the interrelation of the public and private realm, so to speak. The comments regarding the streetscape and sidewalk as well. I think those are sort of the highlights. Oh, I guess the other thing I'd mention is, as I said, the applicant had previously submitted. They did provide a round of response comments, but they're still working on the plan details. There's obviously a lot in there. So though we've had an opportunity to review some of the response comments, we haven't been able to review the plan revisions. So obviously that's something that we look forward to coming down the line. So I guess at this point, fairly high level, because I think there's still some decent amount of work to be done, but we're seeing this is a really good opportunity to hear what else the board is seeing that maybe staff hasn't yet identified. So with
Thanks,
that,
Jack.
Mr. Chair, back to you.
Appreciate it. Dan.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your review of this after the master plan review. I'm going to provide an introduction and hit on some kind of key points, give you an overall sense for the subdivision. And then Drew Gagnons of Goral Palmer is going to talk about stormwater and utilities. Tom Erico will talk about transportation and traffic because that has been a kind of a key piece in the internal design, and then also what's occurring in terms of the larger traffic permitting for the project and how this fits in. And then we'll turn it back to the board for discussion. So this is just a quick orientation. I know we've already dove in a bit on some details, but the board has been wanting, and we provided with a follow-up submission kind of inventory and tally of what's happening in the different districts that we've proceeded with. And we wanted to get this to the board, most particularly the kind of what's involved, acreage, open space, trail length, some of those other key design components that are planned in the Town Center North subdivision. So this is in your packages, and wanted to provide this quickly to the board as part of this presentation in terms of status. I think overall, we're talking about obviously a portion of the Higas Parkway District Plan Development Area and then Town Center North, like we just talked about. So I'll move quickly through that. And then this is the conceptual master plan for this area of the project that you saw back in last spring and that we talked a bit about a few minutes ago. So like this project is the case in other phases, and it's really needed as this project moves forward. It's very much a phased approach to everything, just given the significant infrastructure costs and the fact that we don't have the entire plan development districts figured out in terms of final design. So this shows you within the master plan the area that we're proceeding with through subdivision, which is a phase of both of these districts, as you know. So if you can see my hand, this would be the new Center Street that would be constructed from Higas Parkway. It would cross this area of the Higas Parkway district within the Downs. It would provide access to these two lots 5 and 6. It would cross Willowdale Brook with a stream crossing here, and then it would come to a new intersection with the Downs Road. So the Downs Road would be extended up from Town Center Residential, which is where my hand is. That's really where it's finishing off, and that's under construction right now. So the Downs Road would be extended up generally along the alignment of where it exists today in front of the grandstand, or along at least a portion of the grandstand parking lot and where you think of the grandstand out there. And then it goes off alignment to come up and intersect with Center Street. And that's done for a few different reasons, but one of which is to provide some good development area for, this is lot 3, which is mostly to the west of the existing Downs Road here. It's also outside the lease area that exists and has been in existence for the grandstand, the parking, and the track areas. Also at the intersection of Center Street and the Downs Road are 2 new lots 1 and lots 2, which are smaller lots, all of which are intentionally neighboring the Wex lot 4, which is really the catalyst behind why we're proceeding. And we're very excited that we can proceed and that project's heating up. So this is largely driven and almost entirely driven by the need to activate this area of the project, get access, get utilities, create this very important lot for the project and for the town, and also create these other lots that really are ancillary or abutting that important parcel. So that kind of gives you a sense of why we're proceeding with this amount of development and not a full subdivision of what's in the master plan. I've provided this graphic, and this is more of a long range kind of graphic, but it is intended to kind of give you a sense of how these pieces fit into the larger long range plan. And the long range plan is not kind of locked down, but we wanted to illustrate that these roads, you know, interconnected or making an interconnected loop, and will ultimately loop up to the innovation district, which is here, which is fully approved, and you're seeing a number of applications come forward. And also in the future, we'd come forward with a Main Street that's in this location, that's on the edge of this phase of the subdivision. And over time, when the lease area is no longer in place, the center of the project will be developed incrementally, and more of a grid road layout, a grid utility network will be created. It won't look exactly like this, but this is the direction we're headed, in the direction of how the master plans really kind of come together and can create a complete community. We're not certainly looking for approval of this or anything along those lines. We're kind of far from it, but we thought it would be helpful to show you as we do this piece, how other pieces come along to meet the requirements of the zone and to build out the project. It also gives you a sense for kind of the character of development that may happen on these lots. So kind of back to here and now, back to this subdivision, and to keep you on your toes, we've flipped the orientation. So now, you know, this is lot 4, this is Center Street here, Downs Road is here, and the track and the grandstand are here. So, and as I explained, you know, this is really to activate these lots and provide all the required utilities. Drew's going to get into those details in a minute. And like with other phases of the project, because we don't have specific end users necessarily finalized beyond the WEX parcel, there's a lot of interested parties who want to be in the center of the project. We have certainly some good ideas and a number of leads, but given that we don't have other end users fully designed, we've really designed these larger lots as lots that are almost blocks that can come in with one end user, or could come forward with a number of buildings in phases within them. That's similar to what we've done in other phases, where we're getting these kind of larger lots approved, and then we're going to come back to the board with a site plan or with a further subdivision of them as we figure out exactly what's going on in these lots. And with our master plan and our community pattern standards, that's what's shown on the right side of the screen, we have really strict rules and good guidance around how the buildings address the street, what the setbacks are, and also what the kind of the placemaking requirements are on individual lots, as well as within the subdivision. So Jay brought up kind of placemaking, and with this area of the project, in this stage of the review, our primary placemaking elements are the multi-use paths that we're proposing along the Downs Road. So this is the Downs Road extension up to Center Street that I presented earlier. So like in Town Center Residential, we're continuing a 10-foot wide multi-purpose path up from Town Center Residential. It's going to be a boulevard type design on that side of the street. There's going to be benches and other placemaking elements. There's going to be a green space in a stormwater area that borders Willowdale Brook in this location. And that's a key kind of placemaking element. That's a more of a linear placemaking element within the road right of way. Similarly, we're proposing along the north side of Center Street, an 8-foot wide multi-use path that provides the same type of amenity along here. It's 8 feet until it gets to an intersection here, closer to Higas Parkway. And at this point, we're proposing it to narrow really to avoid wetlands. There's a wetland fill needed in this location. And we're proposing to narrow it there to minimize the impact on wetlands and then provide that facility out to Higas Parkway. An earlier round of staff comments, we wanted to delay the implementation of that and build it 8 feet wide once we have additional wetland permitting in place. I think that's still an option. That's something we should talk about. You know, what's the right approach? A narrower path now or a wider path in the future. So kind of with that boulevard approach and the recreation trail that are kind of key components to this project or this part of the subdivision, we're also doing extensive landscaping within the center islands that we think is kind of the same gateway treatment as Payne Road, as Route 1, that really brands the project coming in, which is placemaking. It's also traffic calming that Tom will touch on. That's occurring here. And then also in the center of the project, center of Center Street, closer to the Wex lot in a future Main Street. That's in this location. Under a future application, we're providing some landscaped islands that shadow some turn lanes. So those are really kind of the framework placemaking elements within the road right of way within the subdivision. And in this area of the project, more than any others, we're leaning heavily on the commercial sites and think it's most important to have the commercial sites provide some placemaking, because those are the buildings people are going to be visiting. Those are going to have the frontage condition with sidewalks and entries along the street. And that's a better opportunity, in our opinion, to do placemaking on those. The other key component is Main Street. I mean, that's a future phase. We hope it's sort of the next phase of Town Center North to come in, work with the board on the programming of that and what that looks like, at least the start of Main Street, entering into the center of the project. That's really where, frankly, that's really the place within this project. And that will be a focal point. And that's something that will supplement the initial placemaking that we're proposing. I think beyond that, Drew is going to speak to the utilities, the stormwater. I guess I would like to speak to quickly the dead end road, or sort of the phasing of road construction that we face with this project in general. It's not sort of new to this phase, or new for the project in this phase, I should say. All along the way, we're incrementally building out this project and providing the necessary linkages from the first phase to the second to the third. As Rocky likes to say in other presentations, I'm going to butcher this, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time? Rocky, jump in to elaborate on that. But that's what we're really doing with this project. In that phase 1 came up and created a public street to this location, if you can see my hand. Phase 2 extended the Downs Road up and proposing this as a public street. We're actually doing that and a bit more in the Town Center North and Higas District, in that if you see in the salmon color or the orange color, this is the proposed kind of enabling infrastructure, if you will, to activate this area of the project. So we're completing the Downs Road up to a new Center Street intersection. We're connecting that out to Higas Parkway, and we're carrying that up to a pretty deliberate location here to get full frontage and access to the Wex parcel, provide good access to lot 3 and enable a building to front Center Street on lot 3. And we're stopping here for a couple of kind of key reasons. One is This lift right now is significant financially just to get this much infrastructure in for one end user. So practically speaking, it's cost prohibitive to go further. The other two pieces are, this is the edge of the outer track. And right now there's space to run water and sewer up to this location, which Drew will talk about. There isn't space to actually build the street in this location, even if there was the financial ability to, which there isn't. We're also coming up to this location to provide kind of that other access point in the meantime that Jay mentioned, to provide a linkage to Payne Road. This is an existing driveway within the project that links up to the Downs Road up to Payne Road. It's similar to the existing Downs Road. It's privately owned. It's part of the existing Downs site. We're proposing that this not be a public street by any means, but be a secondary access that can be used for the meantime to get in and out of this area of the project, provide a third means of ingress and egress, much like the Downs Road kind of does today for other phases. So that's the intent here, is to get this far enough to provide that in the short term. We're hopeful we're back in front of the board with some end users in this area sometime in the future to kind of complete that public street. So I want to kind of provide that explanation. So I think with that, I'll turn it to Drew. I think I covered the items that I wanted to cover. And Drew, if you certainly jump in on your piece.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer, project engineer for Goral Palmer and working on the Downs project here. I'm going to be brief, realizing you guys got a relatively large agenda tonight, and you've probably heard this spiel before, but I'm going to touch on the utilities and the stormwater aspects of the project. So Dan, if you could go down to the utility sheet, I think it's 2 down from where you are. Maybe 1 more. There we go. This is a colored exhibit showing the proposed mains for water, sewer, and electrical that we're proposing in Town Center North subdivision. So starting with the water main, we're going to continue the 16-inch main, which was recently approved and under construction in Town Center residential subdivision. We're going to continue that north along the Downs Road and up into the Downs and Center Street future intersection, which is in the middle of those 4 lots that Dan's been talking about. The water main is going to run northeast along Center Street, up the road towards the outer track where Dan's hand is showing. And at that point right there, it is going to become a cross-country water main. Now, we've been working closely with Portland Water District on the logistics behind this. And the main reason is creating a looped connection from Route 1 all the way to Payne Road with a 16-inch water main. So currently in Innovation District, just north of the page and north of the site, there's a 16-inch dead end water main, which is just near the pump station right at the south of the site. We're going to connect into that. That way we have a loop connection all the way through, and we have water moving through the whole project, which is one of the things that Portland Water District really needs. And so that's what we're going to be providing. And that's kind of the main reason of the cross-country aspect of it. So that alignment is going to be on the future Center Street alignment. So we've horizontally speaking, we have picked the alignment for Center Street all the way up to Innovation District. And this water main is going to follow that alignment. And it's going to be designed for if the road were to be built there. And then we're going to put temporary cover and other different logistical things on it to make it work in the meantime. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we're going cross country in that area. In addition to this, we're installing or proposing to install 8-inch gravity sewer main that's going to serve lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are kind of the heart of this subdivision application. That's going to flow northeast along Center Street, the same direction as the water main, back to the first pump station that is under construction right now, which is just south of the Innovation District. So both those mains are going to be in the Center Street, the future Center Street right away. And they're going to be designed with keeping in mind all the different horizontal and vertical alignments of that roadway in the future conditions that Dan mentioned. Kind of jumping down, so that was on the east side of Willowdale. Jumping down to the west side of Willowdale, we have a gravity sewer main, 8-inch gravity sewer main coming up from Highgast Parkway to serve lots 5 and 6. That's going to connect into a 12-inch gravity main in Highgast Parkway. That runs north to the Higas Parkway pump station, which is south of the Cabela's exit 42 intersection up there. That pump station has a little bit of capacity, and instead of pumping it up to the other pump station, we were able to take a little bit of flow, which are potential lot 5 and 6, their flow down to the Higas Parkway pump station. And we're working with Scarborough Sanitary District closely on that, and we're in front of them. Hopefully in the October board, we're going to be in front of them for approval on this project. In addition to that 8-inch gravity sewer main, we're proposing an 8-inch water main to serve lots 5 and 6. This will be a dead end water main. So as you can see, there's not going to be any utilities crossing in from, I'll call it the east side of Willowdale to the west side of Willowdale. That's going to make the construction of that culvert, which I'll get into here in a bit, quite a bit easier. Now, the electrical design is consistent with the approved master plan. We are working with our electrical engineer and CMP very early in the process of figuring out how these lots are going to get served with electrical service. So you can see it coming up Downs Road and coming off of Higas Parkway. With that, I'll jump over to the stormwater and drainage design. This plan is one of our grading plans, and it shows kind of the scale of the ponds that we're building here. So we really have 4 stormwater BMPs that we're proposing in the subdivision, 2 gravel wetlands, which are very similar to the ones that were proposed in Town Center Residential under a previous project on the Downs. The one Dan is highlighting right there is gravel wetland 1, and the second one is up on the dongle part of the portion of the property, and also the Wex development. That's the gravel wetland 2 right there. Gravel wetland 1 takes a portion of Downs Road, a portion of Center Street, and then lots 2 and 3, I believe. And in addition to that, it's taking 9 additional acres of impervious area to that gravel wetland. So we're really overbuilding this gravel wetland here in the stormwater feature to take future development, so that as we work out through the gridded development, we're leaving room for developed area, and everything can be consolidated to 1 stormwater BMP on the west side of Downs Road right here. That won't be able to take everything, but it's going to take a large portion of that watershed for future development. The second gravel wetland is going to take exclusively the Wex lot and that portion of the dongle property. So that whole development will flow to its own stormwater BMP, that gravel wetland 2. Now, I've talked previously, I think it was back in February or March, about the bypass system that we've been working on, but we've been working with the town and DEP on. This bypass system takes essentially what I'm calling during the melting period, which is November to May, the first inch of runoff that is really has high chloride contamination. We're flushing that around the BMP and directly into Willowdale. And what that's doing is that's gonna flush Willowdale with chlorides at one time, versus it seeping into the groundwater and then bleeding out into the stream throughout the year. So we have a system of weirs that will promote the flow either around the gravel wetland or during what I'm calling the summer months between May and November, where it acts as a normal BMP, and actually the cleaner runoff, the non-chloride, non-salt concentrated runoff will mitigate with the groundwater in these gravel wetlands, and it'll help recharge the groundwater, which eventually gets in the Willowdale Brook. So this is consistent with what we've been working on with the DEP and what we've been working on with the town and creating, doing our part to help the Willowdale Brook corridor. So 2 additional BMPs that we're proposing are grass under drain soil filter 1, which is the one down from that, Dan. It's right on the side of lot 5. That takes only Center Street right away exclusively. That's just in order to get the road in and get that road treated and stored with storm water. And then the second one that Dan's highlighting right now is grass under drain soil filters 2A and 2B. I think it's actually really 1 BMP. That takes lot 1 specifically and only lot 1. So kind of broke it up that way. A large drainage culvert across lot 4 is proposed, if you want to go back for a second, Dan. Now this culvert is going across the Wex site, and essentially it's taking existing flow from the large wetland north of lot 4, which is a big area. We're talking about 60 acres or so, and there's flow down to a ditch that goes down to the tributary stream to Willowdale Brook. So essentially we're going to be putting development on this lot. And instead of running it grade wise, it wasn't going to work to run ditching around the site. We're proposing a 48-inch culvert to get that existing flow through the site. So that's not taking anything that we're proposing. It's essentially just moving the ditch. In addition to that, I do want to touch on the existing Scarborough Downs Road, which is north and east of Lot 4. That is proposed to be removed as part of our DEP permit. The timing of that is a little bit, we have to work with the DEP and we got to work with the Army Corps on when that exactly gets removed. But the plan is to remove the road and replace it with a multi-use path, a 10-foot wide multi-use path, which Dan alerted to before, and Downs Road and Center Street is going to connect that all the way through up the site. When we remove existing Scarborough Downs Road, we're going to replace it with this multi-use path with some series of boardwalks and culverts. What that's going to do is that's going to allow hydraulically the surface runoff from the large wetland north of Lot 4 to mitigate with this, the only significant vernal pool on site, which is east of this road I'm talking about. So that's part of our permit. We're working with the DEP and Army Corps closely on the exact timing of that. But that road coming out and replacing it hydraulically is going to help that significant vernal pool that we're staying away from in this phase. Now you can go to the culvert, Dan, if you want. So this culvert this is a blow up of our stream crossing that we're getting permitted through the Army Corps and the DEP. So location wise, we've put the Center Street over very close to the existing logging crossing that has failed. So 50, 60 years ago, this logging crossing was put in order to get trees across. And there was a culvert put in, it was way undersized and it's essentially failed at this point. So what that's caused is an impoundment upstream of it, which you see that large wetland area that has basically just backed everything up for a little bit. So what we're doing is we're putting in a 4.5 foot tall by 11 foot wide steel arch culvert it's got an open bottom, and we're gonna create the stream through this bottom. Now this culvert's about 75 feet wide. It's supported with retaining walls on either side of Center Street. That's to limit our wetland impact through this crossing. You can see the skewed nature of the culvert here as Center Street goes across it. The reason for this is we're trying to line up the inlet and outlet of the culvert with the existing stream channel. So with the impoundment, it's tough to see where the existing stream is. So we've field verified where we believe the lowest point of that impoundment is, so that when everything starts to recede back in and we get this thing flowing back to what it used to be, or flowing through the original stream path here. Fill in this area is about 10 feet, and that's what the reason for the retaining walls. And this culvert, like I said, is going to open up Willowdale Brook and really do some good things for the stream there. You go to the next slide, Dan. Just wanted to give the board and the town an update on the Maine DEP and Army Corps permitting. So we've had our stormwater reviewed by a third party, and there weren't any comments. So we feel comfortable with that, and we've been working hard on getting that reviewed and getting that done in a timely manner. We responded to the first round of comments, and that is right now with the project analyst. We responded 2 weeks ago, so that is under review right now for the level 2 portion of this permit that we're calling, which is essentially a site law. Army Corps and RPA, we've responded over a month ago to the first round of comments, and that is also being under review. So with that, I will pass it along to Tom Errico. He's going to talk some of the transportation, some of the traffic engineering we have on the site, and then likely back to Dan. So thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Good evening. My name is Tom Errico. I'm a Director of Traffic Engineering with T. Wineland International in Falmouth. Going to kind of give you a brief overview of sort of the philosophy and how we're approaching transportation from a design perspective and also from a permit perspective. I think both Jay and Dan touched on it. It's the street system's really about, thinking about complete streets principles and how we're going to design the roadway to accommodate all users, whether you're walking as a pedestrian, you're a bicyclist. Someday transit will likely be traveling through this roadway system. So really design is really thinking about those different modes. And I think that graphic to the top right is a cross section of the roadway. In some sections of Center Street, we're thinking about on-street parking, really creating that sort of downtown setting. Dan talked about the grid system, and we really envision the roadway system evolving into sort of a downtown grid type roadway that spreads traffic and sort of really creates this walkable scenario. We don't think the design should be driven on the automobile in terms of focusing on moving traffic. We think there needs to be a balanced approach in terms of how how the system is planned and designed. So we've been working very closely with town staff, the peer reviewers over the past roughly 6 weeks, meeting weekly, discussing how to approach this. We prepared this study that really focuses on Town North Center traffic conditions. And so that's really while the traffic movement permit modification is in place. So there's a study that's been submitted to the Maine Department of Transportation as it relates to the traffic movement permit. That's currently in review. That's taking time, quite frankly. The pandemic and the COVID situation has slowed that process down a little bit. And so this is really that Town North Center traffic study is intended to kind of move this review forward as part of approval. So down at the bottom right-hand corner is the intersection of Center and Downs. And one of the things that we've been doing as part of that study is thinking about future growth. And so fundamentally, all the analysis that's been conducted in terms of traffic analysis assumed growth that's consistent with what's in that modified traffic movement permit. So substantial growth and substantial traffic. And so we've been thinking about how to design that intersection as it relates to the number of lanes, the configuration, and traffic control, and the amount of traffic that quite frankly would be traveling on that roadway. And so one of the things that we initially proposed at that location was a raised intersection. So fundamentally slightly raising sort of the elevation of the intersection. And really that's a traffic calming tool that's employed by some designers as part of making sure that traffic moves slowly. The intent is that we want speeds to be slow. I mean, it's kind of intuitive, right? This is going to be this downtown sort of vibrant, livable area, and we want speeds to be slow. And so the thought was that maybe we can, employ kind of an innovative sort of raised design. We had some communication with town staff, specifically the Public Works Department and the Police Department. They're not supportive of that idea in terms of a raised configuration for traffic calming. So we've come up with some other ideas about how to ensure that it's safe for pedestrians and other users as it relates to keep, providing safe conditions. One is providing some rectangle rapid flashing beacons as a warning device for people crossing the street. And then other traffic calming elements. We're looking at, certainly some lane width adjustments potentially. And then long-term, what is the traffic control, particularly at this intersection, the Downs and Center Street? We think it's initially stop signs on the side streets and sort of Center Street becomes free flow. And then over time, we are recommending a monitoring program to see what traffic volumes will be in the future and make some sort of informed decisions about what would be, that sort of the next step from traffic control. It could likely be a traffic signal at that location, but we do think a monitoring program makes a lot of sense, given how this is quite frankly a new grid system, and we're not exactly sure how much traffic will be flowing on certain streets. So we continue to work with staff and traffic peer reviewers on the study. We met recently, as Jay said a couple of weeks ago. We're responding to some of those comments. We look forward to concluding their review.
Thanks, Tom. I just wanted to add a couple more things on traffic and transportation and wrap up for board discussion. I think Tom did a great job of characterizing the balance we're trying to employ here with complete streets, but also providing enough capacity for autos. And so one of the design considerations here is kind of the sweet spot in terms of turn lanes and how big they are. And I think that's one of the kind of the key things for the peer review process internally is, you know, providing enough queuing for the future so that we're not immediately needing to widen, but not do it so much that we're creating like a highway system. So one of the, I think, fundamental design considerations is along Center Street. It's hard to see on your screens, but there's a left turn lane planned here, and then it's kind of backed up with a center island. And that's been on purpose so that should there be need to kind of add capacity to the intersection sometime in the future, there's space allotted easily to kind of grow that left turn lane. We're hoping we don't need to. I mean, part of this is trying to slow traffic and not have sort of traffic design drive our design, but we've kind of built in, and there's a few other places we've built in so those easy capacity expansions to make that work with the road system. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that we're thinking ahead, but not trying to be too highway oriented in our design. I think that's really the key piece of our review with the peer reviewers. The DOT TMP is looking at sort of the offsite needs. It's really kind of coming to that balance with the peer reviewers through the subdivision process. So I think you covered most of that, Tom, in your presentation. I probably should have switched slides. And as indicated, we're in the middle of the TMP modification and are working hard on that with town staff, DOT, and the peer review folks for the town. So in terms of kind of next steps, we've been talking a while. I want to turn it back to the board. Obviously, ongoing traffic coordination. We're pretty close on Maine DEP with their review, and we're going to have a permit later this month. They're very kind of on the early side in November. And the critical path for us is obviously we're doing this to activate this area of the project and to enable kind of WEX to proceed in more site programming. So we can't, based on sort of policy and practice, apply for site plan review and kind of progress the WEX site design without a preliminary level of subdivision. So that's a step that we were interested in this evening to kind of enable WEX to continue on. We know we have a lot of things to address that I think are more outside of the limits of the lots in the roadway configuration, and are hoping that we can do that between preliminary and final. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair and the board for discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Rachel, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm still, I guess, struggling at maybe a 25,000 foot level here with the roads. I guess in terms of what's going to happen when. I believe we talked early on about the point at which the Scarborough Downs Road would be closed at a certain time and a certain point. And a new road opened up between Payne Road and the development area. But as I recall the conversation, one of the things that I sort of heard, I think, was that at some point, and it looks as though we're kind of at that point, the access to the actual grandstands and racetrack would be coming from Route 1 up the Downs Road as the primary access. Because all of a sudden Downs Road, if not immediately removed, is kind of subsumed under the construction of the Wex property. And you've talked about a driveway area that could take people, I guess, a really extensive driveway type, from Center Street out to Payne Road. But the whole Center Street finish is what's stopping me right now, and what I have to think about. Will most of the traffic, do you think, be coming from Route 1 past all of these new housing developments? Or how are you planning to get anybody from Payne Road to the grandstand?
So there's a whole phasing plan in terms of how this is going to be constructed that we're going to be working on, particularly with the Wex construction. So the intent is to have, if you can see my hand, this is the existing Scarborough Downs Road here.
Yep.
And the Scarborough Downs Road is a wide driveway. I think, as you know, it's not a road right of way. It's a wider driveway than this paddock driveway. But they're both kind of suitable for travel. But that being said, we're envisioning this Scarborough Downs Road, this section of it out to Payne Road, to be a primary construction route and also access into the rest of the project while site development occurs here, while the Wex site is built, because it's actually to the right of that development site itself. Also, while this road is built, this road is going to take quite some time to build and extend from Higas Parkway. That's going to happen concurrently with development on this site, maybe some other lot development that occurs. All the while, the Downs Road is still going to be usable to provide access to what's happening there, to provide access to the grandstand and the track. And the activity level at the grandstand and track is likely to continue to kind of decline over the next year or two. So that's sort of another topic. But so we're going to have a phasing plan and a construction plan as to, okay, this is when the Downs Road is used, and this is when it switches over to alternatives, which would be here, but also, of course, this road connection out to Center Street and down to Route 1. So that's a really kind of a logistical piece that we're working on.
Then I guess what I'm not clear on is, why do you have Center Street going so far beyond the Downs such that it creates a dead end street, which, we're not thrilled with, and instead stop it right approximately where the Downs Road is, so that it is actually a connected street?
So I guess two reasons. One, Drew mentioned in that one of our, I think, pretty proud and creative approaches to the environmental side is to connect these large wetlands back together by converting the Downs Road to a much narrower path and to have hydrological connections between them. So Army Corps and DEP are very excited about that, and we think makes a lot of sense. So that is going to need to happen, and that converts this to a path from a driveway, a wide driveway. So that's one reason. The other reason is, it's legally speaking, they're both driveways. They're both wide roads that are on the site that aren't going to become public streets. So we're simply moving that connectivity, that temporary connectivity from the Downs Road to this paddock road. And Drew's reviewed the condition of this driveway or road, and we'll be making some minor improvements so that it can carry traffic, it can carry public safety equipment, much like the Downs Road does today. So that's really the reasons.
Where would the paddock road carry, where does the paddock road end?
It goes out to Payne Road. So this isn't the best plan. If I flipped it around on you, Rachel, but this is where we were talking.
Okay, got it.
This,
Yep.
this is it, and it connects to the existing Scarborough Downs Road here. So it provides a linkage all the way up to Payne Road, much like this is the one that you're thinking of here. That would
Right,
be
that's the
discontinued.
Downs.
So that it provides the same function as a temporary surface.
Why, if you're going to really be developing the Paddock Road, at least as a temporary, temporary link, why is that less costly than continuing Center Road until it connects to Innovation?
Because it's in pretty good shape and it requires some patching, not building an entirely new road 1,300 feet long to public standards. It's a very big difference in terms of cost and complication.
Okay, I'm still concerned that apparently you're sort of building a dead end road and then attaching it to another driveway, it looks like. That's pretty accurate.
It's the same thing we're doing today with the Downs Road coming up from phase 1. We're building a new public street that ties into a wide driveway. So this project, sort of, in order to proceed, has to do it in pieces like that. The costs are,
Yeah,
very astronomical.
I understand and I sympathize, but I'm also struggling with what, we're trying to, with what we have to look at. And one of the things that we have to look at is the Center Street kind of ends at the end of what you're asking us to consider. Right now, we don't know what's going to happen next year in terms of the economy, in terms of the funding, in terms of people's desire for more commercial or more residential or whatever. So we are kind of doing a kind of going on your promise that it's going to be, Center Street is going to be continued, that it is not a dead end road linked to something that is not really a road, but is simply an access driveway. And that worries me. It bothers me because we simply don't know how things go in the future. So we do know, I think, if you stop Center Street where Downs Road now, you still have it stopped at a driveway, but you have a connection that people at least can understand. So I
think
know you're in a very difficult situation, and I'm trying to work through how I think about it, and as I look at it, and I don't have recommendation, I don't have an answer or anything else, but I do want to express my concern that we have a pretty extensive dead end area past the Wex property.
Yeah, I'd love to, we could do a site visit with the board. I think the paddock connection it's not a cart path. It's a 22-foot wide paved surface that can carry a fair amount of traffic. It needs some patchwork here and there, but it's not dissimilar to the Downs Road. The Downs Road is a 40-foot wide potholed surface. So I think going out there and looking at it, I think some of your concerns would likely be addressed. It's a very kind of easy connection to make, and it's not dissimilar to the Downs Road today. Also, Center Street currently is dead-ended off Innovation Way. It's right now we have a dead end today. This is a very similar situation. We knew we couldn't build Center Street from Innovation all the way out to Higas Parkway. So that's why we did the same thing there.
I think, Dan, one of the things that just concerns me from a purely practical point of view is people who are used to coming onto the property are used to get to the grandstand, going to come off Payne Road and at a pretty good rate of speed head down towards the grandstand because they want to they want to get in and they want to watch the races or whatever is going on. I used to watch the speed of the traffic going up the Downs Road when there was nothing there to get to the racetrack. So roads that are can those roads carry the paddock road, can that carry the traffic for the length of time it's going to need to carry it for people not just who want to get to the racetrack, but for any construction people who are taking a look at the Downs area and perhaps people who are going to work at Wex, because I think what I'm hearing from you is the Center Street probably will not be completed until after Wex is built. Is that correct?
Center Street up to Innovation will not, no, if that's what you're asking. And we've really designed the WEX site to primarily connect to Higas Parkway. And we can work on, Tom, I'm sure can work on plans to bolster that so that we're getting employees and end users using the roads we want them to use and having secondary roads.
That's going to be very important.
Yep, so we can work on that.
Yep, I think that's very important. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Rachel. Jen?
Okay, I had several of the same questions that Rachel had, and I appreciate the explanations that have been given today. I do think that whatever construction phasing plan you're working on, particularly in terms of road and other infrastructure build out, will be very helpful for me and probably for the rest of the board and probably for everybody else to see that, to sort of help. Just as during your presentation, I just made some notes about like trying to keep track of which like what will the existing roads look like during this particular time, and just some of those same questions. So look forward to that graphic whenever you have it ready. I also just wanted to kind of clarify, you made a couple of references to the difference between public and private roads here, which I understand from a technical standpoint, and I think probably the rest of the board does as well. But I am a little bit curious what that will look, what your, how you envision that looking to the general public, to folks that already live in the Downs, to dump trucks hauling fill in, or other construction activity. So if you could you just talk to that for a minute, which I think will be helpful, and it might be a little bit of some of the questions that Rachel was asking, like what are some of these roads that are there now? How do you envision that looking until they're not being used anymore? Does that make sense?
Sure.
With a detailed question somewhere in there about whether or not you intend the paddock road to be paved.
Yeah, the paddock road today is paved.
Okay.
So to clarify that, and I think Drew provided one submission, photos of it, but we should kind of get that to the top of the the really thick submissions that you're getting, so you can understand like the condition of the paddock road, because I think it'll answer some questions on that. Sort of construction phasing and construction routes, I think, are always going to be a moving target within the project. And I think that actually having these, what I call driveways, can be an advantage for the project, because we have these surfaces that as time goes on, we can use for construction traffic, and we're not driving on public streets or to be public streets. So we really want to use that to our advantage. And conversely, be directing traffic and end user traffic and day-to-day traffic to the public streets. And when there's a temporary driveway, like the Paddock Road, to be really thoughtful about how that is shared. So we need to come back to you with kind of some of those details. Right now, we're in the middle of figuring out specific timing on, okay, when does construction start? When does this stage of construction happen, and what are their routes? So it's not something we could easily kind of put in your application, but we're kind of working on that and can provide staff and the board some more information on that in the future. Well,
Okay, great. Look forward to it. Good luck. That sounds hard.
I'd like to jump in on that if I could.
Yeah.
Rocky here. So I just want to maybe help bring some clarity to it. But if you look at the bottom of the screen that Dan has up right now, we're building the Downs Road from where his hand is down on the page. We actually have from Route 1, from the Route 1 end, you can come in, you can access phase 1, but you cannot drive through the project today. We're under construction with that section of road. So as part of, and that'll be opened up probably sometime the end of November, it'll be back open to traffic, and it will be physically a public road, by spring. That'll end right about where his hand is. Now, as part of this project, the next section, if you will, that allows WEX and other end users to happen, we'll be building that section of Downs Road. But there's a big section of the existing, what we call the Downs Road, it's really a driveway, that's open, that will be able to continue to carry some, carry construction traffic. People that need to get through can. It helps us work with the fire and public safety to make sure that they've got sufficient access. So we'll be building the Downs Road. We'll build Center Street into the end. There will be, for a time being, 2 ways to actually access Center Street off the Payne Road end of the Downs Road. That being the Paddock Road that Dan's talking about and the existing Downs Road. It'll be a matter of timing of when the existing Downs Road piece goes away and becomes a boardwalk and a wetland. But we'll work that timing out, but a lot of that will be part of how WEX is finishing out and whatnot. So we envision that, the majority of traffic that's going to come and actually access this subdivision that's before you tonight is going to come off the Higas Parkway. And that road section will be done as buildings start to come online. The section of road back to and connecting out to Route 1 will be done. So we'll have effectively a loop from Route 1 to Higas Parkway, all done to public standards at that point in time. In addition to that, we'll have public road headed off towards the Innovation District. And that's that section that you folks are calling it a dead end. And I guess technically it is a dead end. The public way is a dead end, but there will be a connection to be able to get to the Innovation District. And then from that end, there'll be another project that'll come to you that'll make that link to the Innovation District. That project will be probably equally as large, if not larger, than the project you're looking at tonight. So, that's probably in the $1.3 to $1.8 million worth of road to connect from where Dan's hand is right now to the Innovation District. So that'll all be part of another section of, another project within the subdivision. So again, it's all part of that. How do you eat an elephant a bite at a time? And we're trying to put pieces of the road network together that will work, that will handle the traffic, and yet can be, that the cost of those pieces can be borne by the project itself, if you will. So it's a big jigsaw puzzle, but we think we've got our arms around it, and we're thinking we're making our cutoffs at the right point. Not to say that if this board or staff feels that a better cutoff is better, we certainly can have a conversation. But we put a lot of time into thinking about how do we eat this elephant, and how do we take it off a bite at a time. I hope I've added some clarity there. I'm not sure I have. Maybe I've just been rambling, but I appreciate you listening to me.
Yeah, I also had a question about potentially, let's see if I can explain this. You know, does it make sense for you, understanding that you have some other, so it's not just road construction phasing, that you're trying to phase new roads in and older roads out, but certainly the wetlands permitting piece and all of your DEP work comes to play in there, as well as you go to transition over this older road into, you know, away from road and over to like the path and boardwalk option. But so for that short stretch of Center Street between, yep, right there, between those two, I wonder if maybe perhaps your phasing plan will help to clarify it, or even seeing it in person. Admittedly, I haven't been out here in a little bit of time, but you know, perhaps having that, just that little connection piece as kind of a future sub phase of road construction, or waiting to build that until at least the point at which you're closing the current Downs Road to traffic might help the utilization and mix of existing roads and the roads that you have built out to that point not feel like such a dead end, not such a, you know, and I know in your minds it's not a dead end because you're clearly seeing the connection in the future, but just, you know, picturing yourself as someone driving there, you know, what I see and what you've shown here is you're proposing, you know, presumably a full build out of this road. So I think it was like about a 70-foot right of way with some landscaping on either side, but generally, you know, a good chunk of that's going to be impervious roadway with space carved out for on-street parking. And then all of a sudden you're going to come to what? You're going to come to, you know, again, I assume a much narrower, more temporary in appearance type road treatment for that paddock road. And probably straight ahead of you, you're going to hit, you know, the cross-country utilities that are in there that will someday be the road, but at that point, literally, what does that look like? And so I think when I hear others here talk about or read, you know, in staff comments, the concern for a dead end road, that's what I picture. And I think that that's what the intent of the ordinance is to try and avoid, is that, like, you know, 60 to 0 kind of feel for a development, understanding that you don't know that, you know, nobody knows the time frame that we could be dealing with that situation. So just another thing to consider, I guess, as you work through your construction phasing and how different pieces of those roads, how the timing of those could play out. I also just quickly, and this, it might be premature at this meeting, but I believe it was in one of our peer review comment letters, there was a question about alignment of the two currently skewed entrances onto Haggis Parkway. And I didn't hear you talk about that. And I noticed that on a number of graphics, the other entrance isn't shown. So whether you have an answer for that now, or if you don't, that's fine. We can look for it in future submissions. But I did, that was something that I noticed as well.
I can speak to that to an extent, and we can come back with more information. When the project across the street received its control of access shift, because this is Haggis Parkway, you need specific curb cut locations. We actually coordinated with Maine DOT on how that driveway is located for their phase 1. I think it's Magenta LLC, I believe, is the name of the project. I think it was approved for a first phase that has low traffic generation, but then there was a phase 2 that would add, you know, I don't remember, 3 or 4 more buildings and more traffic. And that for the phase 1 driveway, I believe DOT found the offset acceptable given the low volume of traffic, but for the phase 2, they're actually required to implement a curb cut in a different location. Really because the Center Street driveway or road intersection is the big traffic generator. Like it's the connection that needs to kind of drive location, because it's going to be accepting a lot more volume, and there's a left turn lane needed for it. There's an offset from the beacon. If you can see this driveway here with the hand is the access to the beacon. So, you know, this is entering a huge project. It needs to really reflect the greatest separation from this driveway and the right kind of location. This is sort of a small project that's phased. So that's really how it was left. We can provide more details on that, but it was left that adjustments would be made to that project for future phases to be the right long-term solution.
Okay. Amazing. I appreciated the below view and explanation of the stream crossing that you'd be looking at putting in for the Center Street over the Willowdale stream. And I just couldn't help but wonder if you had entertained the idea of any placemaking at that location. You know, similarly to you have some other long linear type treatments along the Downs Road kind of coming up from the bottom in the graphic that we have right here, but I just didn't know if there was any other opportunity for, or if you had considered something like that at that location, and you know, things like, it's slightly larger in scale, but you know, like the Martins Point Bridge that was put in between Portland and Falmouth, and how there was just a little bump out added there for viewing or sightseeing, and understanding that that view shed is a little bit different than this one. But I just didn't know if, you know, with the presence of the multi-use path there and sort of the gateway treatment for the project in general, if you had thought about that at all.
I advocated for a wider crossing initially, and was shot down by the Army Corps, DEP, and I think my consultants because of being able to get that permit. So initially we had talked about having a bit wider crossing there, kind of to have more than just the crossing, and kind of compromised at, you know, no esplanade path on the curb, and to make it as tight as possible to minimize the wetland impact. So that's the background to a degree, and trying to do a little bit more there. But Rich and Drew certainly jump in on that if you have further comment.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can look at is placemaking kind of before or after the culvert, so that we're not impacting wetlands, that we're really trying to limit down this narrow path, but also looking at, you know, right before or right after. Jennifer, I think what you're referring to is some sort of opportunity there, whether it's educational or something like that, that could be almost on the multi-use path before or after, with some benches and maybe some sort of plaque or something, if that's what I kind of think you're getting at here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the certainly you're standing to make some pretty significant improvements to this sensitive environmental area, and I think a little plaque there would be great. And also, you know, maybe just an explanation of what folks might be looking at or not. Maybe it's just a lovely area to be in. But yeah, I would encourage that, especially if there are other areas throughout the project where finding those spaces might be a challenge. And I understand certainly the cost implications of logistically changing the dimensions of that crossing itself. So I think that makes some sense to look for you know, adjacent spaces to that. Two quick observations from the slide, one of the slides that Tom presented on the Center Street and Downs Road intersection. There were a couple of curb radii there that just looked really large to me, particularly in light of conversations about traffic calming and complete streets treatments. I just know firsthand how difficult it can be to try and rectify some of those things after the fact. And so I would just encourage, which I know that you already all know this, but I'm just saying it anyway.
No, but actually, Jen, we've been looking at that specific issue because that was an observation I had.
Keeping
they're
crosswalks as short as possible, separating these ADA ramps to be the most pedestrian friendly, and I apologize for not attending the last meeting if this was discussed there, and I'm also happy to take this conversation and question offline and follow up with town staff so as not to take up too much time tonight. But I'm sad to hear that the raised intersection option is not at least being pursued further. And I understand they're not popular anywhere in New England, as far as I can tell. And if someone ever goes anywhere where plowing occurs and they have raised intersections that are successful and embraced by town staff, I would love to go on a field trip and check it out myself. But
Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Okay, we're kind of like that. And I only normally I would just let this one go, but I think that in this context, it's really important to think about the ideal and not necessarily use the same toolbox that we use in other areas where we have built out right-of-ways that we're trying to fix and improve for pedestrian safety, that have been that way for 100 years or something like that. And so I just kind of think I just thought the raised intersection option was just a creative treatment for figuratively and literally elevating pedestrian safety here. It can be, now is certainly the time to think about it because of the drainage impacts and curbing impacts down the road. It can be a really hard treatment to implement after the fact. If you're like, oh yeah, actually, shoot, we should raise this intersection. It requires a lot of, adjustments down the road. And, while we are increasingly all seeing more and more of these RFB installations, I just personally, I kind of feel like they're, signs and lights are a good option for trying to draw attention to and fix a problem that exists. And I just don't, I would be lying if I said I didn't love it as an out of the gates kind of treatment here. If this is an intersection that stands to potentially be signalized and an RFB unit is perhaps being considered in, a somewhat temporary fashion, that's one thing. But I, even with the blobby or, colored in nature of the graphic that we're looking at right here, I see this. I see the heart of this project here. I see this being a critical key intersection for the rest of this, for this phase of the development, but also the whole rest of the project. I mean, if you're coming in off of Higas Parkway, this is it, right? This is where you're making your decisions about where you're going. This is where you're coming if you're visiting WEX or, any of these other key parcels right at this corner. And so I really like the roundabout idea too. Sad to read that the analysis there didn't necessarily work out. But I guess I would just encourage, I don't know, that it can be a really hard hurdle to overcome when you have other departments or staff or who knows what equipment that has a hard time with that type of treatment. I don't know if a field trial of any type is an option, or a field trip to other places where treatments like this have been successful. But that's my 2 cents on it. and I don't want to beat a dead horse here or take up too much more time, but I do sort of think that would be, could just be like another. I think good design, the best designs are the ones that you don't really notice that much, right? It's not like, oh, hey, who put this curb extension in front of me? Or, whoa, there's a bright set of flashing lights. What's going on here? It's, oh, hey, I'm entering this, really cool area. I'm going to slow down and check it out so that I don't miss anything that's going on. And so I do just kind of see this intersection as being kind of key to that end.
So I think just quickly, Jen, I think a lot of the things you said about ADA compliance and sort of rethinking some of those corners we're already after that. We think there's some tweaks that can really help. I think contextually, I think the road is already speaking to sort of traffic calming in many respects. I mean, that's a good thing, right? I mean, I think we're talking about some of the sort of design elements of how to get at it, but contextually, the way the streetscape's happening, all that stuff is really, really good, right? We're trying to really sort of get at sort of that, motorist sort of view of things in a positive way that'll sort of, I think change their behavior a little bit or make their behavior match that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And so I think that's something we're looking at. We're looking at sort of, like I talked about, the lanes maybe. Can we narrow some of those to sort of have some impact a little bit? If we're not going to be able to get a raised intersection here, maybe there's some other design tweaks that we can make to get to that sort of point that you're talking about. Like the design is going to sort of dictate how people are going to travel, which is what we want. We want people to go slow here. So, it's just difficult, right? When fire departments, police departments, public works, they're tough. I mean, and that's just the reality of the business. They have their needs, and they're it's generally a difficult. They drive design in many respects.
Well, can I just join in, because I hate to pick on the police and fire and public works. I will say one of the other drawbacks that they brought up is past implementation of any raised crosswalks or raised other things. They get inundated with complaints, with noise complaints, and I guess I'd be interested in how that would be addressed. So there were, I think, a multitude of issues besides drainage and like I said, the noise was a very big complaint that I was hearing from, I guess, police, fire, and public works. So, because you're talking about a lot of truck traffic here as well, it was my understanding, and how DOT was actually trying to push the truck traffic to Higas. So they're actually going straight onto the highway. So I guess those were all playing into that conversation.
Yeah, typically noise is an issue, Angela, when it's a residential setting. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes an issue for people that live there. So I'm not maybe relevant here, but typically that's when those issues come up.
And I only have one other comment. I'm sorry for taking so much time. I noticed a difference between some of the material submitted and something mentioned in your presentation, which was just a little 2-foot difference between the width that you're proposing for parts of that multi-use path. I do, again, understand the wetland and build out constraints as you approach Higas Parkway. Glad to hear that you're at least shooting for 8-foot wide. Beyond that, I checked because I had to just what the AASHTO and FHWA guidance is on multi-use paths, and there's definitely strong language that speaks to a minimum of 10 feet for a variety of reasons, all of which I know that your team is aware, but for others on the board or any public listening in, that's generally has to do with the nature of multi-use. So, if you picture someone walking, a dog passing, someone on a bike with a trailer, or any combination of the varieties of ways that we get around and we use those trails, that it really does require more than 6 feet. 6 foot, actually, I read somewhere that 6 foot is the recommended minimum for a one-way facility. And so I would just urge you to continue to look into options to achieve an 8-foot minimum width path where possible, if at its narrowest, 10 foot anywhere else that you're going to be calling that a multi-use path. And then, similarly to some of the traffic projections that you've looked at for the roadways, if this is intended to really be an area that encourages by design a variety of modes of transportation, anybody on foot, anybody in a wheelchair, on bikes, strollers, scooters, who knows what. And on top of that, we're envisioning a lot of those people. 10 feet wide might not even be sufficient. So whether, these paths also, just like roadway build outs, they get expensive the wider that you construct them. But I guess I would just urge a look at, preserving space for that if we get to that point, which would be wonderful. And if not, just really seeking at the very least that 10-foot width, because I think it's really important. And I think a lot of people are going to want to do that here. I wouldn't even say that if I didn't think that this was an area that would be desirable in, but I think the rest of your development program and the other cues from infrastructure that you're building here and investing in are going to lead people to want to do that.
No, I think we'll be really happy if there's congestion on the multi-use path, because it means the project's super successful. And Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can see my hand again, it's 10 along the Downs Road, because we see that as like an artery within the project for bike ped use. And then it's 10, I think, Drew, again, correct me if I'm wrong, in front of the WEX site along Center Street, connecting up to this path we've talked about being the old Downs Road, and really being kind of that internal artery, if you will, for bike ped. And then it's been 8 kind of on the fringe, kind of going out towards Higas Parkway, and it narrows really because we think it's going to be used a bit less kind of on the fringe, but also to minimize natural resource impacts, because we have that stream crossing, we have some wetlands that we have to justify a fill. So it was driven by more kind of the environmental, but also a little bit less use out here, just given that it's a bit of an extremity versus the core.
I'm done.
Thanks, Jennifer. So we're approaching almost 2 hours on this, so I'm going to encourage everyone to kind of just, Roger, I'll let you have a turn here, but just keep in mind that I'd like to at least try to get to some other portions of our agenda this evening. So go ahead.
Sure. I'll be very brief. I actually thought the applicant did a very nice job explaining what their plans are. I understand what they're trying to do. I think they're fortunate that they have the current Downs Road and the Paddock Road that they can utilize during the construction phase. And I'm not a technical expert like Jen is, but everything seems to make sense to me. I don't think it's going to be a big problem, that little extension from the existing Downs Road up to the Paddock and then transitioning to the Paddock Road. I just don't think that's going to be an issue. And if it were to be an issue, they could just not develop that little stretch right there as it would be in its final stage with all the landscaping and everything. But I don't know. I think they've done a good job, a thoughtful job, and taken advantage of the existing roadway system in there to work around everything. And it seems to me the trigger is going to be WEX. it seems to me. And once Lux goes in, then that extension going over to the Parkway will definitely have to be constructed. But otherwise, that'll be the last phase of the roadway to be constructed at this stage. I really don't have any other questions other than the Center Street and the Downs Road. Are those going to be basically like 3-lane roads, the width of 3 lanes?
Center Street and Downs are 2 lanes with some turn
With
lane
turn lane.
intersections.
With turn lanes, right?
Yes.
2 lanes with turn lanes. Okay, so that will be sufficient at these intersections for crosswalks and people getting across the street without any problem in your estimate?
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be pretty narrow, Roger. So we don't want to provide too many lanes so that it's a longer crossing and less safe for pedestrians. So we're trying to keep things relatively, narrow for pedestrians.
Okay, all right. I like I said, I think you did a good job putting this all together, and so I'm all set.
Nick,
Thanks, Roger.
if you don't
Rick?
mind, could I just chime in? I just want to touch base.
Go ahead, Jay.
Just a bit of clarity. I think, Roger, as you suggested, I think, just to be clear from staff's comments, I think conceptually we understand exactly, where the project is headed and, don't have significant issues with the concept of connecting Center Street temporarily with a private way through Paddock up to, the Payne Road. It's really about being sure that we know what those details look like, because it's an unknown sort of time frame. And as part of this project, my understanding and based on the conversations and the reading I've done on it is that the traffic analysis really depends on the interconnections to Highgate Parkway and Payne Road and Route 1, where so far the development projects that we've approved, that the board's approved, really hasn't, sort of looked at these separately. The residential pieces really focused on intersections at Route 1 and not worried so much with the cross connection to Payne Road and to Highgate Parkway, though it exists to Payne Road, obviously, across the existing Downs Road. So I just think that's one of the sort of pivot points with this project, where you really start to get into having the traffic analysis focus on those 3 connection points. And so again, conceptually, we understand where it's headed, and just want to be sure those details are ironed out as we move forward, as the subdivision ordinance looks for.
So are you, I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that we have to know definitely that Center Street's going to be connected right up to the Innovation Development District? Is that what you're saying, Jay?
Center Street is going to connect up to make a connection to Payne Road. That's my understanding, is that's what the traffic analysis is based on, is having that connection, correct? And so
Okay,
again,
so right now though, I mean, I can see from a business point of view, from a business standpoint, I mean, it doesn't make economic sense to do it right now until you have something there to be developed. So I guess
so they are proposing to, again, they are proposing to make a connection, and it's going to be a private connection, not built to street standards, which again, sort of they've explained why they want to do that, because they ultimately see in the final analysis, right, that there is going to be a more fully developed road. And again, so all I'm suggesting at this point is we just want to be sure that the town has a good understanding. I think it was the questions that maybe it was Rachel or Jen were raising about, okay, when in the final analysis, when this builds out, and it's sort of the town's job to, what the board has before you is this application. So if nothing else were to go forward, and that's a very unlikely scenario, totally get that. But what would that connection between the end of Center Street here look like, and how would people get up to Payne Road? And we generally understand what that connection is, and really it's just about the details. As you sort of said, you're not the details guy, so that's sort of what our questions are more poking at, really, is the details, less the overall concept.
Well, I guess I don't understand. So what are we requiring them to tell us then at this point?
what that connection to along.
I mean,
Paddock-
they've already indicated what they expect to happen.
Mhm.
They, I don't know. I don't understand what we have. I'm missing something then, no?
I don't think we've seen those details as of yet, Roger. So yep, they've said we're gonna have a 22 plus or minus foot wide connection from the end of proposed Center Street here across Paddock. That's about the level of detail we know. And so really we're just asking for more information so that we can ensure there's gonna be proper connection. And so I don't think it's I don't think we're far off. So I hope, staff comments didn't sort of push the board in that direction, but we do think it's important to understand those details because that's really what the critical component is at this point.
Okay, all right. Well, I won't, I'll let it go at this point, but I just don't understand what further details. They're going to patch up the Paddock Road to make it accessible, drivable.
Can I chime in? I guess one of the comments I made, which actually Drew addressed when we're talking about this, is, for an example, Roger, is I asked about the turning radius at that intersection with this new Paddocks Road or existing Paddock Road and whatever they're going to do to improve it, which I guess we want to see a detailed cross section of what that looks like. But to think that there's going to be a lot of traffic, think about all the traffic. That's one of 3 points in and out of this site. So we're talking about whether it's box trucks or whatever, and just all the traffic in and out of WEX itself. We're looking at also from the traffic side and talking and dealing, collaborating, I would say, with Tom Errico and Rennie Dutton and looking at if WEX goes in, really looking at that modeling and the numbers, that this is actually going to be a heavily used private road, or what they're saying is a driveway, because that's how they're modeling it. So that it needs to be able to function to support, say, WEX. And I guess that's the question for the planning board, is making sure we have those details, that as a development goes in such as that large, that the infrastructure can support it, whether it's private or public, that it can support what they're showing for a traffic generation in and out of the site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we got the picture and have Tom after this meeting. It's been a kind of long discussion. So Tom, that's on your list.
I'd like to just make one point if I could. I know, Dan, you don't want me to butt in, but I just want to point out that connection is going to be made, be needed, especially as WEX comes on. But all of these numbers, all of these traffic numbers include the full build out of this subdivision, of which right now we only have one end user that we know of. So, I mean, I hope we hit a home run and we come right back to the board with end users for every one of these lots, and this becomes a huge problem that I have to figure out. But I don't think that's going to happen. You folks are looking at the numbers on all of those lots being done at the same time. It's not going to happen. It's going to take time to build this thing out. That's my only.
And I guess my understanding is we're looking at traffic in pieces too. I mean, right now we have 4 pieces of traffic that are coming, like you said, we're taking it one bite at a time. It's also building on the traffic too. I guess we're also not jumping all the way to the end in full build out. We need to look at those little pieces, and it gets complicated.
I think
to try to present, I guess, in one evening.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Tom's tasked with, and to Rocky's point, is like monitoring with this project is huge for us. I mean, and for the town, it's as sites come in, we're going to understand what's working and not working with some of these temporary connections. And like when, we've been talking about the Center Street Downs Road intersection and not like jumping to a signal. The traffic engineers kind of want to jump to, let's see a signal there. And we're like, well, we have to hit a home run for a signal to come close to being warranted. Plus, we may not want a signal. That's sort of a discussion to be had around what do we want this to be. So it in large part comes back to kind of frequent monitoring and check-ins to say, all right, this is working and no problem, versus, hey guys, the Paddock Road needs to be widened or needs some type of improvement because we're seeing you're doing really well and it's time for some additional improvements. So I think that's kind of a big piece that we want to figure out what the right monitoring plan is so that we have a good situation, to your point, Angela.
And I think that sort of speaks to why we need to do the analysis of what the full build out is, so we know what we're headed towards, not sort of take it site by site. So really to understand what those full impacts are and, you know, how we incrementally get those improvements, right? We've talked about that, about saying, okay, you know, when we hit such a threshold, you know, these things need to happen. Hit another threshold, maybe these other elements come in. So we don't want to be building things for one level and then be taking a whole different course down the road. So certainly complicated, without a doubt.
All right, I'm gonna give Rick hasn't gone yet. Give him a quick minute here, but I do want to try to tie this up a little bit.
You know, I think Rachel and Jen did a really great job, and Roger as well. So I don't have a lot of questions. I mean, moving forward, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the placemaking and a little bit about the culvert, but I think those are all good for now. So I will yield my time back to the chair.
Thank you, Rick. Rick Meinking.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I just had one quick question on the gravel wetland 1. I see a curb cut, and I'm just wondering what's that going to lead to? You know where I'm talking, Dan?
Yeah, there's a planned curb cut that goes to lot 2. So it should be, I don't know if you're planning.
No, it's further toward Route 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Rick. Yeah. Below gravel wetland 1, we're
Yep.
anticipating a future pump station
Okay,
in that location, and we wanted to show the curb cut now to provide access to it.
got it. All right. And then for access into lots 5 and 6, are you planning on doing that somewhere around where that crosswalk is?
Yeah, there's a 4-way intersection proposed just to the highest side of that crosswalk is where we're showing the access to both of those lots.
Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. So I don't want to jump into a lot of the stuff that we've already discussed. I think there's been a lot of good feedback, and definitely as far as the applicant goes, you know, a good presentation. I think was very helpful. You know, I know you're asking for preliminary subdivision. I'm sorry, a preliminary approval this evening. So, you know, for my 2 cents, I'm not quite sure we're there yet on tying up the details of this, but I'm definitely open to anyone else on the board if they feel like this is ready for the preliminary, if they'd like to see it one more time before we do anything like that. I see a nodding head or two.
You know, from my point of view, I could approve that. And
Thank you, Roger.
let Angela and the staff work with them on the other things.
No, I see Rachel's not in yet, and Jennifer, do you kind of give me a quick indicator of?
Yeah, I would just like to say a little bit more detail for how the proposed Center Street connections will tie into the primary entrances to the project from Higas and Payne Road. Cross sections would be great. Just a little more detail to that end, and I think, you know, you're probably already working on those types of things anyway.
Yeah, and then so, you know. Jay, is there anything on the traffic study that we need to button up as well? Is there more?
I think there's, as you just said, there's a lot of details that need to get resolved. I guess I would really look to, there's been, you know, we've provided our staff comments, so unless there's questions the applicants have, I think we'll continue to proceed down the review process and try to get things tied up for the board next time around, so we can move to preliminary where the expectation is that we know, you know, what that road alignment's going to look like and what the sort of right-of-way extensions are and those things. And I think we're moving in the right direction towards that.
All right, thanks. And so in my excitement to get into the details of this application, I forgot to open this up to public comment. So if there's anyone here that has been patiently waiting to make a statement on this project, please use the raise my hand feature in the bottom right-hand corner. We would be glad to help facilitate that discussion further. Okay, seeing no public comment, I will close that. All right, Dan, Rocky, thanks for giving us this. Good luck. I guess we'll see you shortly with some more detail intact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda this evening is Joy Real Estate of Scarborough LLC requests a site plan amendment review for 260 US Route 1 Assessors Map U43, Lot 42. Jay?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for the reuse or repurposing of an existing building, as you just said, at 260 US Route 1, which is just across the street from Town Hall at the corner of Ward Street and Route 1. The applicant is seeking to renovate the existing building to accommodate a mixed-use development, or mix of uses, I should say. First floor at this time being proposed as a dental office, and then there being a two dwelling units on the second story. This application was actually on the board's agenda back in September, but got tabled due to the lateness of the hour. But they were able to respond to some of the staff comments, so which really helped to sort of reduce and modify our memo to you this time around. So I said that some of the primary or main elements remaining are discussion around the joint use of parking spaces, where you have a mix of uses on a site. The planning board can approve the utilization of parking spaces by the two uses, so long as they sort of have different time needs, if you will. So we'll want to talk about that, where the applicant's really seeking a reduction of 2 parking spaces. And part of the reason for that, the reduction of the 2 parking spaces, is they previously had 2 parallel parking spaces really near along Ward Street, very close to the intersection of Route 1, which staff from planning, public works, public safety, engineering had some concerns with the utilization of those spaces from a safety perspective, from a overall sort of street network perspective. And the applicant has proposed to or is looking to eliminate those at this point. And so now sort of just remaining questions around sort of the final design of that area, but we're appreciative of their second look at that. There's also some comments about potential street trees and looking to accommodate the expectation from the site plan review ordinance in that regards. Some questions related to a photometrics plan. And then there's a couple of waiver requests, and the one that staff just wants to flag right now is the applicant's requesting a waiver from a stormwater management plan, because they're actually reducing the overall impervious area on the site. And the statement to date is that, you know, with that reduction, it shouldn't have any further adverse impacts on downstream abutters. And while that may make some sense conceptually, I think staff would like to ensure that there's a statement from an engineer in the record on that, just so that the town, therefore, you know, the record is clear that the applicant has provided evidence in that regards. So I think that would be our comments that I would tee up and turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jay. Ms. Misner?
Hi. Thank you. Sashi Meisner with Gowan Turgeon Architects, here on behalf of Jin Huang, who is the owner of 260 Route 1. I'm going to share my screen now. So as Jay said, we were on the planning board agenda last month and we got kicked off. So we're really happy to be here tonight. Appreciate that we made it on. We would be looking for approval from the board tonight. We were fortunate to be able to resubmit and readdress some of the comments. So we're hoping that that we've addressed all the comments that are out there and that the board is comfortable with what we're proposing. The site, as Jay said, is directly across the street, so I'm sure you're all familiar with it. I'll just give a little bit of background. You can see that it's fully developed. The owner the previous use was a church, so the owner is changing the use for office space on the first floor and two two-bedroom units on the second floor. As you can see from the image, the aerial, it's completely paved right now. So the owner is going to be doing upgrades to the building as well as improvements to the site itself. We have Bessie Square on the west side. We have the parking lot in the south. There's businesses all around. So it's what's being proposed is appropriate. Here you can see the utilities are all on, we have overhead electric on Route 1, and then we have all of our utilities coming in off of Ward Street. So everything is there. We're maintaining what's existing. You can see the extent of the pavement. One big thing right now is that the circulation is a little abstract. So there's no real clear parking spaces. There's excess pavement, which makes it difficult to kind of understand how to use the space. So we're trying to improve the site in that respects. They have about a little bit over 30-foot curb cut along Route 1. They have an opening along Ward Street. And then they have an easement through Bessie Square to get to the property. So just to show the pictures, the owner is looking to reside, put new windows, replace the existing porch, remove the ADA ramp, and install the stairs facing Route 1, so it would be coming right out, addressing the street. The color scheme would be kind of neutral grays, so a light gray and a dark gray, and then a stone base around the foundation. This is just showing the access through the easement area here. It's about, I think it's 18 to 20 feet wide. And this would, that would now become pretty much the primary exit from the site. And this is the view from Bessie Square. You can see the sidewalk, and they have the one catch basin there that I believe was put in when Bessie Square was constructed. But you can see there's really no definition within the space. And you can see from the little clip from Google Street View that they caught someone going out that exit. So it is used as a cut through. We're trying to improve the circulation through this entire area with our improvements. So this is what we're proposing. We are removing the large curb cut with in and out access. So now it will be only in access. Originally we had a 15-foot wide entrance here, and staff asked us to reduce it to 12. So we're now showing a 12-foot wide access, which works well. We have removed the parking spaces that we had on Ward Street. So now we have 13 spaces that we're showing. We did keep the pavement over here. We have a couple of things going on. So we have trash, our dumpster area is over here. So we have trash and recycle bins for the office space. We have access to the basement through this door here is for mechanicals and things like that. And then we have the residential trash bins on this side. And we have a bike rack over here. So with all of those things going on, we felt it was would be valuable to keep the pavement here as far as being able to have access in there to get the dumpster and take care of things that needed to happen for the few times that it has to happen during the week or weeks. We did keep pavement here too, because there's a tip down curb and the sidewalk kind of ends here. There's a tactile warning surface right here. So we just thought that we should keep the pavement going up there. Our recent comments back asked us to curb this from here down to here. We would like to not do that. We would like to at least maintain access through these areas. We could curb this up. If the planning board wanted us to do that, we could do that. As far as the shared use parking, we do think that's a great idea. Zoning requires 11 parking spaces for the office. So, and then 4 spaces for the 2 apartment buildings. So we're showing 13 here. And with the office space, being able to use it during the week and apartments being able to use it during the evenings and weekends, it seems like a good mix. I am imagining that probably the two apartments would probably just have 1 vehicle per unit, and in that case, they would all be able to be accommodated within the parking that we're showing. And just to point out that we did remove all of the pavement up in the front of the building, so we no longer can drive through here and out to this space. We reduced the pavement about 20%. So we were really happy with being able to do that. This shows that the Ward Street existing conditions. So you can see where the property line is, and this is the access to the basement. And then we have access to the first floor right here. We'd be locating the dumpsters here within an enclosure. And then the residential trash would be on the other side of this little doghouse here. And you can see where the property line is. And I'm not sure what the town was thinking we would do. That's for discussion, I suppose. This is another view looking the other direction. Here you can see the adjacent property, and we would and you can see this side of the doghouse there. So this is the other option that I did just after getting staff comments. So curbing down to the corner of the building. So closing that off, adding a little bit of a radius so we could still get in there, and then planting this area. This seems like a good compromise, and I'd like to hear what the board thinks about that. As far as plant materials, we did add another tree. So we are showing a pin oak right here, which is this tree. We're showing a flowering cherry right in front of the building, which is this variety. We've added a locust at this corner. We were a little concerned about visibility and the utilities and the turning traffic here, but we think this is probably a pretty good tree to put in that location. It's really open and a nice open canopy. We did remove one of the smaller trees that was over here. We have a Korean maple right here. And then in the corner, lower corner, we added a red maple. So for a little property, we have quite a few trees in it. And we do have an evergreen that's over on the corner screening the trash area. This is just what the building looks like. We're going to hold off on submitting our sign, but it would pretty much be a sign similar to what's shown here with a stone base and the sign up top. You can see the new entrance. We've got rid of the ADA ramp and now we have an interior lift. So this is an access to the lift that would take you to the basement and to the first floor. And we have stairs that would take you to the second floor. So a separate residential access. And that's about it. I have a few more images, but we can open up for questions.
Thank you. We have the opportunity for public comment on this item. If you were here in attendance and would like to speak, if you could just use the raise my hand feature in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and turn it over to the board. Roger, do you want to start this one?
One of the first things that caught my eye when you were explaining the layout is, so traffic on Route 1 that's heading south, they would have to turn into Ward Street to get to this building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How are they going to know that? In other words, I see where you're going to have a sign. Any thoughts of say some sort of a directional sign right at the corner or something like that, or?
Yeah, there might be something that's on the sign itself that says access from Ward Street, I was thinking. And we are thinking of signage here defining where the exit of the out of the site is, but I do think you're right that there would need to be a sign, maybe beneath his business sign showing where access is, because I agree with you that it will be important for the people coming for the first time to know how to get into this property.
I mean, Ward Street's going to be signalized, correct, Angela?
It has a signal, yes.
It does have the signal.
Sorry, I was muted. It already is signalized, yes.
So I can, you know, people, I mean, obviously after they've been to the building a couple of times, they'll know what to do, but I can see it be a little confusing for people. They might actually end up driving down past it and come into Bessie and then circle back somehow that way, you know?
Yeah.
So now the other question I had, I mean, I think what you've done here with the building and the whole layout and everything is pretty nice, and it's going to be a big improvement. On Ward Street, maybe Jay or Angela could answer this. Eastern Village, they're committed to putting in a sidewalk. Is that correct? Is that going to be?
That is part of.
It'll be on the other side of the road.
Oh, the other side. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So is there some sort of a curb, like you know, an angled curb or something that could go down on Ward Street, you know, right where the dumpsters are and everything, so a truck or anything could easily get up there? But
Well, that was actually a question I had when, is it the intention, Sashi, if you don't mind, Roger, if I could ask, just
No, go
building
right
off
ahead,
that question, for there to be a dumpster truck that would be pulling in there, or is this really, are you still looking at sort of the totes?
Yeah, I mean, there would be wheeled
Okay.
totes.
Yeah.
But
So I wanted to just mention, because I know when we reviewed this, that was there was discussion about there being a dumpster pad here, and there was concern that potentially it would be a dumpster truck pulling in here, which would then be backing in, it would be obviously so large that'd be into Ward Street, and we're right near the Route 1 connection. So that'd be a bit of a concern, but if it's really just going to be a wheeled thing, more readily dealt with that way. It seems like as Sashi's started to head down the road, there's opportunity to at least narrow down the amount of pavement, recognizing, sure, probably some type of way into sort of this utilitarian area of the site, if you will, is going to be needed. But how much do we really need, I guess, is what to look at. I don't know if that answers your question, Roger.
Can the dental, it's going to be a dental office, right, on the bottom floor?
We're not actually sure. I think that
Okay.
is his initial idea to have a dental office, but he hasn't decided yet whether he's going to use it for that. He's just making it office space right now.
Can a dental office, or can any business have just bins similar to the residential bins?
So I don't believe, and Angela, correct me where I go astray, but I don't believe we do commercial trash pickup. So I think what happens is for businesses that don't have, because there are small offices that don't have large dumpsters, so they wind up hauling it and taking it to somewhere. Angela, where would that somewhere be?
You can get a private hauler.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So theoretically, there's no reason then that there couldn't be a curb right there, because you're not going to have a vehicle actually driving up there to hoist up any bins or anything like that. You could just bring the bins right to the edge of the curb.
Well, you're kind of wanting just to be able to get off the road there slightly, I would think anyways. And, if a truck had to pull up to, maintain something in the basement as far as mechanicals, I think it was just a matter of making it so that no one was sticking out into Ward Street so that it was easy. And then if you're up, if you're biking, you can bike up and park your bike. So just kind of more of a functional thing for those little things that need to happen there occasionally.
Okay, maybe a question to Angela. Heading further down Ward Street on that same side, is it just the pavement and then sod or grass? There's no curbing any further down, is there?
Right. There's no
Okay,
curbing.
all right. So
there is at the corner.
Just-
obviously where the tip down is, or it
Yeah,
opens up
okay.
there. Yeah.
all right.
Is
Well,
there curb? I'm sorry, but is there curb at the entrance to the Bessie Square coming off Ward Street? I thought I saw that in one of the pictures.
That's square.
Oh yeah, actually, Sasha, yeah, right down the
Oh,
radius,
yeah.
right at the
road.
radius there is, but
Right,
not
not on the
right,
road.
not along the road. Right. I just wanted to be.
Okay. Well, okay. Now, I guess I'm all set at this point. I'll let others have their say.
Roger. Jennifer?
I understand the sentiment behind allowing this to kind of stay as an uncurbed situation for trash and whatnot, but I think, certainly I like the second iteration of adjusting the curbing here, but I do wonder if there could be an option for closing that in a little more completely for reasons previously stated, but also I just got thinking too, like in the winter when this street gets plowed, unless you have someone coming, unless the plan is to privately plow out that area, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the curb line here would get plowed in by the street plows anyway. So you would, you're not really going to have, functionally, it's going to be closed in one way or the other is kind of what it seems like. And so I would just wonder if, the option of even a small, sidewalk or paved strip out to that curb and maybe a sloped curb instead of a vertical curb or something like that might accomplish the same access purposes to what is there today. Aside from that, I think that this is a terrific renovation and reuse of this property. I think it's commendable that you've been able to reduce the impervious area by such a large amount. I think the green space at this corner will be a tremendous just visual asset to the property and the intersection in general. I also am completely in favor of the shared parking model, and think that this is perhaps a great example that we could point to down the road on how what types of uses might be compatible for that type of relationship to be successful. The only other very small comment that I would offer is that just towards to the north of the parking field, you're showing 2 parking spaces head in against what appear to be the sidewalk right there. And I just know that a lot of times that can lead to vehicles overhanging onto that sidewalk, or a full clearing, like snow clearing of the parking spaces. But in this case, that would lead them onto the sidewalk. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to shift those down away from the sidewalk at all and introduce any sort of buffer space, or something like a curb stop or something like that, just to kind of help separate those 2 uses at all. Other than that, I think this is a great project and a good reuse of a site that's right in the heart of one of our downtowns.
Thanks, Jennifer. Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer on those 2 parking spaces. I think some sort of a curbing there to stop folks from running over, and perhaps some striping that says compact cars only might be helpful there. This is a tremendous improvement over what is there now, especially with the green space that's coming in. I had wondered about the handicapped accessibility, so thank you for showing me where it was. I had looked at the plans and couldn't figure out where it was. But I think architecturally, it's classes up the neighborhood. I do think the trees that you've added, the 4 trees that you've added, I think it's 4 in a spruce. Thank you for doing that. In addition to getting rid of some of the impervious, it provides the sort of street trees that we really need to see along there. I think the second iteration of the green space, so that it comes down even with the building and curbing to there, I think that's what you should go for. I was thinking a couple of things, either a mountable curb, which is possible. Certainly at a minimum along Ward Street, you're going to have to do some striping or some signage that says no parking, some signage on the street, or a small sign that says no parking. Otherwise, you may end up with some folks who say, oh, I can't find a space elsewhere, but look at this. And the striping or mountable curb at least says, no, this isn't a parking area. I like the idea that you cut down on the width of the driveway coming in. You've just done a lot to alter the whole atmosphere of that building. I think anybody who finds an apartment there is going to love it. I do have one suggestion on the apartments. I noticed that you had one storage closet on the second floor that included the mechanicals, and that's sort of a combination really isn't a good idea, because all of a sudden the storage takes over and the mechanicals get lost. But you might want to offer couple of storage enclosures in the basement in the unfinished area for the tenants. They would love that. It's a place for them to bring their bicycles in at night and put them in the basement. So I think that would be a good use for an area that's otherwise underutilized, great amenity for the tenants. And I know folks look for something like that where they can keep their extra stuff. So that's, I think the shared parking is a good idea. I have nothing but very good things to say about this, and thank you for the design that you've come up with. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Rick DePerry.
I think the other folks did a great job. I do agree that this is a really, really good use of this property and really big improvement. I have a question, just one question out of curiosity on the siding. Right now, I think it's like vinyl siding on the bottom and then shingles or something on top. Is the siding that you're using, is it the same top and bottom, just a different color?
Yes, it would be. And there'd be
Okay.
there's a trim piece in the middle, I believe, and trim on the all the corners. So it'll look a bit different. And right now there's a little bit of a flare to the exterior, and I believe that would be gone.
Okay. And then it looks like you're using black frame windows. I like black frame windows, actually.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this project. I really like what you've done with it, and I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. Rick Manking.
Yeah, I really like this too. I think my colleagues have done a great job describing all the pluses that this is going to bring to that corner. I just had a couple of questions on your lighting plan. I can't quite figure out where all the fixtures are. It's because there's a lot of dark lines in the photometrics, I suspect. But I'm just concerned about the lighting level in your entrance area. I can't tell if there's a fixture there and what sort of lighting is going to be covered in that main entrance. So maybe we can just clean that up just a little bit, and I'm sure staff can work on that with you. And then my other question is on the W3 light. It looks like it may be a 5K, and the other lights are all 3K on the color renditioning. So I'm just wondering if maybe if that is a 5K, you're going to have two different color lights that are going to be visible, and maybe there's another fixture you could choose to keep it all within the 3K color. And do you plan on doing any lighting with the signage? I know you haven't submitted it, so that'll have to take into effect because it's really dark out in the front there. So maybe just throw on that fixture or a location of where the lighting for the sign might go. Otherwise, I think this is going to be great. Removing that second floor fire escape will be a nice plus from the backside. And I know a lot of people go to the restaurant there and you see an old rusted metal ladder, big improvement. So thanks for bringing this to the town. I think it's going to be a great addition.
Thanks.
That's it.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I'll kind of echo my fellow board members' comments here. You've done a nice job. I think the one thing that I just want to make sure that we clarify here, we do have a motion ready this evening. So for the board here to weigh in on the applicant's proposal to have the curbing kind of follow, and if I'm following correctly, the grass line, is that sound right? Is it on Ward Street? Yes. That's the proposal from the applicant, instead of closing it all off. And I don't know if we have, everyone's weighed in on whether or not it should be a full curb along that Ward Street, or whether or not the applicant's proposal here is sufficient. My 2 cents on that is I'm okay with the applicant's proposal, understanding they need to get to the dumpster and things.
I'm okay with the applicant.
Let's,
proposal.
Rachel.
I am too.
So I heard Roger and I heard Rick, DuPerry, Rachel, and Jen. Can you weigh in real quick?
Yeah, I would like to I'm okay with the applicant's proposal, but I would like to have striping added or some sort of no parking, so that that area is kind of delineated as not being part of the street.
Yeah,
Okay.
we agree with that. I understand that. That would be a good idea.
Okay, great. So with that, Jay, do you have anything perhaps I could be reading? Yes, Roger.
Yeah, I think we should make sure the applicant understands one of the waivers that Jay mentioned about the statement from the engineer regarding the stormwater management.
Okay.
So was that not, is you're saying the waiver is not accepted? Is that?
No, we're not saying it's not accepted. It's, I think staff wants to make sure that there's a statement from an engineer confirming the statement that you're making regarding the stormwater.
So even though like the pavement is, I mean, we're cutting pavement and we're not really changing any of the grades, would that be typical if someone was just renovating a building that you would require that? I guess I wasn't super clear. We haven't added any, we haven't changed the grading in the parking lot. We've done nothing but reduce it. We've added no, nothing that seems like it would have, you know, if this was just a building renovation, I was curious. That's how I was thinking that it wouldn't be required, but maybe it's, is that not true?
I'm just, go ahead, Jay.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I guess the sort of the difference, in subtle or not so subtle difference is the applicant seeking a waiver, you know, with, as Sashi just mentioned, the information that they've provided in the record, they're hoping is sufficient, I think, and Angela obviously will chime in as well, but I think from the town's perspective, what we'd like to have is something on the record from an engineer or other professional judgment that codifies that evidence, because often what happens is what the town winds up getting as soon as a site changes, sort of no matter what that site change is, any problems that existed in the past, we get called and you know, sort of say, this got worse, come fix it, to the town. And so what we're hoping to, and you know, from the town's perspective, we think it would be great if the applicant had, if there's a piece of evidence from an engineer that we could point to and say, nope, this engineer said it was fine, it's their stamp, you can talk to that person. I think, again, Angela will weigh in, but I think we generally, again, this is sort of like the conversation we had not too long ago. Conceptually, staff understands what the applicant's proposing. We don't have any issue with it. It's really about past experiences and what we see and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis with these type of things. So, Angela, feel free to weigh in or.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And where this is in obviously a dense area that you're close to all your neighbors in that respect, that the water, yes, is draining to neighbors' properties now, and it will continue to. As Jay said, though, with any change is when we get the complaints, and making sure that we're not impacting abutting properties is really the key to that.
Okay, I do have one question. Read from the Wooden Curran said that we've been looking for the easement for this catch basin, and there is no easement recorded for this property referencing this catch basin drain. And I'm wondering what is going to be required if we're not able to track anything down. I've reached out to the engineer who did the Bessie Square, because what it looks like is, yeah, right here. So in 2006, this is what this property looked like. I have no catch basin, no curbs or anything. Bessie Square went in, and you can see where they cut the pavement around and installed the catch basin when Bessie Square was constructed. So this was part of the Bessie Square project, but I have no record of it. So I'm trying to, in the most economical sense, I mean, the applicant has to pay, a lot of fees with this project, traffic fees and all kinds of things, trying to figure out the most economical way to get him approval and, satisfy everything. So this is the one thing I have not been able to find yet, and I haven't been able to talk with the civil engineer, but I've reached out to him. So I'm hoping I get some clarification, but I haven't seen an easement in the Bessie Square documents. So I'd like to understand what's going to be the requirement for that.
Yeah, do you have any insight on that?
I guess my thought is I guess going back to the Bessie Square proposal and approved site plan, if they were proposing that connection and proposing that grade. So have you reached out to the owners of that property?
Not the owners, but Steve Bushy was the civil engineer. So I've reached out to him, and I just haven't had a chance to talk with him yet about it to find out. The plans that are recorded don't show it, so I haven't been able to see it, but.
I guess I'd say at this point, it is a comment in our peer reviewers' comments, and I guess it's a question to the board. Is this an area that you feel needs to be, it's a existing piece of infrastructure that's been there for at least 10 years. We've got a picture from 2010 here, and we're in 2020. Is this one that the board feels the applicant needs to do more due diligence on, or that based on what Ms. Meisner has suggested this evening, that they've done their due diligence and really have tracked it as far as they can go? And I guess I'd ask the board what your thoughts on that are.
All right, let's weigh in. Rachel.
Oh, you would call me first. I'm still.
You're the only one I can see on my screen from the board. That's.
I'm still trying to think about it, because what you're saying is that catch basin is on the property in question, but was done by and connected to Bessie Square. Is that correct?
That's what I'm able to understand right now. Yeah, without speaking with the civil, but that's the research that I've done, that's what it shows.
And you have no idea what's underneath it and how good it is and what it's doing.
I mean, it looks like it's not in bad shape, and it's collecting only a small area. So I don't think it's, there's not a whole lot of, I don't think there's much in it because it's not really collecting a huge area. But
well, while I'm very sympathetic to your desire to save the applicant money, there's actually a fair amount of disturbance going on, because as you pull up the asphalt and then put loam and seed it, there's a possibility for changing, there's a possibility that something could go wrong, I guess, in terms of where the water is going to be flowing. And repaving the parking area, changing the entrance. When you think about it, it's actually a fair amount of construction work on the surface, but it is construction work, and it can have an effect on the pattern of water flow. So I would say I think you need the engineer.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger.
Well, I think I'm having a bad night because they're going to take up the paving in front of the building and seed it. So to me, there's going to be less runoff going into the catch basin. So from a logical point of view, if there hasn't been any problems so far, I would think there wouldn't be any problems if they removed the pavement, more pavement. But I understand the town's desire to have something official for the town's protection, but I brought it up simply because it was in the staff's comments. So I don't know what to say.
All right, let
From a logical point of view,
Jen, you got a thought on this?
it'll be a problem. Pardon me?
I'm gonna ask Jen for hers while you think about it.
Having done similar calculations myself, it's pretty hard to imagine that a 20% reduction in impervious area would have an adverse effect on the offsite drainage here. But I also know, I can appreciate lessons learned on behalf of the staff. And so I just wonder if this is something that we could perhaps, if the applicant is able to provide additional information, whether that be from having a civil evaluate the stormwater runoff or getting in touch with the Bessie Commons development team, because they likely did something similar to that. If additional information could be handled either administratively or as a consent item on another agenda, because it seems like we're essentially looking for a no, it's not going to be a problem, or yes, there's more to think about. And outside of that, I'm not hearing I don't have any other concerns about this project. And so just in the interest of trying to keep the applicant moving, I was just wondering if that's an option for either the applicant or the town.
For what it's worth, I'm comfortable with just creating a condition of some sort, rather than having the applicant come back with the information. I think if we have it some sort of process vetted out with a staff involvement, that way they can still avoid the extra trip here. And staff, of course, would be able to elevate it back to us if there was something that they found that wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah, this is Rachel. I have no problem with having just a condition of approval in there that the staff sees something that makes them comfortable, and they can figure out the wording that ensures that the town has some protection. And if there is a problem, come back to us, and if there isn't, it just simply moves forward.
And then as far as weighing in on what we need to see, Jay, we're not really asking for a full stormwater model here. We're just really asking for an engineer to check it out and say, yeah, we don't think that we're going to have an adverse impact on stormwater, right?
Yeah, I think it can be that simple of a statement from.
And I think that's a reasonable request in my world. From where I sit, that's a reasonable request to have to comply with it. So
I would say get Steve Bushy to write your letter.
So, the rest of the board okay with that solution?
I agree, Nick.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Jay, you got this motion?
I do have one I can share. It's going to overtake Sashi's, so bear with me. Are you seeing what I hope you're seeing?
Okay.
All right.
I move to approve the site plan amendment titled 260 US Route 1. It is not there anymore.
I'm not sure what I did there. How did that happen?
It's back. All right. I move to approve this. Okay. It's back. Yeah. I move to approve the site plan amendment titled 260 US Route 1 as depicted on the plan set prepared by Garwin, Pergin, dated 9/21/20 with the following findings, waivers, and conditions. Findings: the applicant is proposing to renovate the existing building on the property to accommodate a dentist office on the first floor, 2 residential apartment units on the second floor. The proposal also includes additional landscaping provisions along the property's Route 1 frontage. Property is located at 260 US Route 1 and will utilize existing frontage. Property is located within the Town and Village Center transition TVC 2 zoning district. The planning board has reviewed the application and supporting documentation and finds that the proposed design of the site plan adequately addresses the site plan review and zoning ordinance requirements for the site utilization and layout, access, internal vehicular movement, parking, pedestrian ways, landscaping, stormwater management, lighting, architecture, signage, utilities, and storage. Conditions: 1, planning board has approved the shared or joint use of proposed parking spaces on the property for the 2 principal uses. The applicant has clearly demonstrated that parking will substantially meet the intent of the parking requirements by reason of variation in the probable time of maximum use by patrons or employees among such establishments in accordance with section 18 CFS in the zoning ordinance. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise the plan set to include: A, reduce the proposed paved area along Ward Street from US Route 1 corner to the property edge along Ward Street as discussed with the board, and provide demarcation to eliminate parking. B, add element to prevail a vehicle overhang onto the sidewalk from parked cars at the 2 parking spaces perpendicular to Route 1. C, additional street trees along Route 1 and Ward Street frontages. D, a detail of the proposed crosswalk. E, seating areas and benches adjacent to the main entrance to the building. F, a plan note indicating a specific time when the lights on the property will be dimmed and modify lighting fixture details to coordinate lumens. G, the correct building orientations on the building elevations. H, a wooden enclosure for the residential trash bins along Ward Street with the associated detail. I, provide statement for professional engineer that the development will not have adverse impacts on downstream abutters. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 3, prior to issuance of building permit, the applicant shall: A, pay the traffic impact fees. B, address the traffic peer review comments in the memo from Traffic Solutions dated 9/28/20. C, provide ability to serve letters from the sanitary district and Portland Water District. 4, prior to the issuance of a sign permit, the applicant shall provide final signage plan. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 5, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. That was the motion. Have a second.
Second.
Any? All right, I'm going to call the roll. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd. Rick Perry.
Yes.
Nicholas McGee votes yes. Thank you and good luck to you.
Thank you.
1 second, folks. All right. Next item on our agenda this evening is Crossroad Holdings LLC requests an amendment to the conditions of approval for the Innovation District subdivision within the Downs Assessors Map U53 Lot 1 through 55. Jay.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So let's see, this one's something a little bit different than the board typically deals with. The applicant is before you to amend. This is really an amendment to the existing condition of approval for the Innovation District subdivision, which really essentially capped the amount of traffic that could be utilized out of the Innovation District to what was permitted in the traffic movement permit. As you all are aware, because as we've talked about in the past, at this point, the development has sort of utilized all those trips, but for I think 1 trip maybe from what's been approved. And as you know, and we've talked about, the applicant team is working through a full traffic movement permit modification, to really activate the entirety of the Downs. However, what the condition as written or states is that no further site plan approvals can happen until there's approved traffic, or until the approved TMP is in place, which is typical of how the planning board reviews site plans and subdivisions. However, I think, as part of the discussion, the Downs project is of a different scale and magnitude than we're used to seeing. And, at this point, there's maybe, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say a half dozen of 50 lots in the innovation district that have been approved. And there's sort of all this remaining capacity within the development that the applicant would like to move forward on some level of construction prior to the traffic movement permit actually getting modified from the state. Again, understanding that there's sort of some complications due to COVID, there's some complications due to the size and magnitude of the project. So really looking at, are there ways we can take incremental bites, locally to activate or allow some level of construction to continue, but still have some safeguards in town in terms of, one, ensuring that if this is, the amount of traffic that's developed, we know what type of traffic improvements or impacts would be expected. And two, that there is a traffic movement permit process going on sort of behind this that sort of caps the occupancy of these buildings. And so, the applicants came to staff, met with myself and Tom Hall to sort of say, look to see if there was creative ways we could continue to move forward. And so it's really sort of taking this sequential step towards traffic. I will say I did have an opportunity to speak with the applicant earlier in the day. They recognize there's still some work to be done based on our peer reviewers memo. We think, again, this is one of those ones where conceptually we understand sort of where we're headed, but devil's in the details. And so we're really just trying to iron those few items out. And so I think what we talked about, there was some discussion about, well, should we table this item? But it was really felt really at my direction that it was worth having the conversation with the planning board to be sure there aren't other things that we may be missing. Staff and peer reviewers can raise all the issues we want, but ultimately as the board, you're the ones who vote. So we want to just be sure that there's no other big sort of elements out there that are missing. So I think I'll leave it at that for right now. And of course, happy to answer further questions or provide better background if I didn't quite capture it, because it is a little confusing for sure.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Dan?
Thank you. I think Tom Errico, our traffic consultant, is going to provide an introduction. I'm happy to help with Q&A after his introduction.
Well, good evening again, Mr. Chair. Tom Errico from TY Lin. I'll be brief. I think Jay did a very good job of sort of framing this request, which is just a change in the condition of approval. I'll give a little bit more detail about where we've been and the importance of this modification to the condition. As Jay indicated, we've been actively pursuing a traffic movement permit. It is a big project. It takes the department a long time to review the information. That, coupled with the pandemic, quite frankly, is just delaying that process. So it's ongoing. Information has been provided to the department in terms of a traffic impact study, Section 7 application. It's just going to take some time to get through that. They're working through it. We're trying to engage them as closely as possible to kind of to really progress that. But quite frankly, it's taking quite a bit of time. What Maine DOT has said to us, they're in agreement with proceeding with site plan approvals that would fall outside the current TMP. Again, there is a current TMP. They would find it acceptable for current site plans to move forward with the assumption that a certificate of occupancy wouldn't be issued. So basically DOT is saying, if you want to take the risk and go ahead and get site plan approvals for individual lots, go ahead. Just be aware that they're not going to be able to open up their doors and add any traffic to the system until the modified traffic movement permit is in place. basically that's what we're looking for from the town, basically saying the same sort of thing. Listen, we recognize that we've got some delays in the actual permit. We're just looking for some flexibility so site plans can move forward with the understanding we're going to have a full traffic movement permit in place with all the requirements of mitigation, that'll be part of that review for off-site before any of these site plan applications generate traffic and add to the system. So as part of this, we've been working since August with staff and the peer reviewers in terms of just working through this process. It's a little unique. We're calling it the interim traffic study. Basically trying to help staff and peer reviews feel comfortable with where we're going and sort of the site review of the project. And so we've been basically meeting weekly for the past roughly 6 weeks and trying to just go through and make sure that we're helping staff and peer reviewers and ourselves work through sort of the details of that traffic study. We've made tremendous progress, quite frankly, in a relatively quick way. We're virtually there. We had a meeting this morning from 9 to 11 to go through some final details before the town peer reviewers and staff are comfortable. So we think we'll be done this week. And so again, with the same sort of condition and sort of premise that yes, these site plans that are critical to move forward so that people can begin to construct their projects, move forward, but the doors won't open and traffic will not be generated until the TMP is in place. And so, I'll just be brief. That's where we're at right now. The study's very close, and responses to comments are very close. We'll have those completed in the next few weeks.
All right. Thank you very much. If there's anyone here from the public, you have an opportunity to comment on this item. Use the raise my hand feature in your bottom right corner. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, turn it over. Rick DuPerry, do you want to go first?
It seems reasonable to me. It seems like a reasonable request. As long as, the way it was explained, it seems reasonable. As long as the businesses can't really start contributing traffic until the traffic movement permit is in place, I'm okay with it. I think it seems reasonable.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Jennifer?
First of all, I just want to thank the applicant team for pulling all of this together. A lot of time you're in probably uncharted territory, I'm guessing, in terms of this size and scale of this traffic movement permit for everybody involved. That's all of your consultants, probably everybody at DOT, and certainly everybody on this board. And so I know that a lot of times it can be just as hard to stop and summarize everything when you're in the middle of it. That it would be easier for you to just carry on and continue with that much larger review with folks at the state level as well. But that it feels really important to me as a member of this board and a member of this community to kind of hit pause on that and give us a status update on what we are potentially looking at in terms of offsite contributions from this project. You've got everything down to the nth degree on the site, and it's just, as a transportation professional, it's impossible for me to picture what that looks like offsite because we haven't been talking very much about it yet. So I really appreciate the work that's gone into pulling this together sort of midway along the way here. Tom, I wanted to clarify something that you just said, or maybe you didn't say, but what I thought I heard. Is what's being sought, is that that has DOT said off-site mitigation needs to be built and in place before these certificates of occupancy can be issued, or just that the big traffic movement permit itself, the study effort, needs to be in place and finalized?
Just the permit.
Yeah, okay.
The TMP rules permit up to 3 years after the permit to implement improvements. There's a timeline requirement.
Okay, thank you.
And Jen, if I might, and I know we're really talking about the interim study, but just so folks understand, because I think we talked about this a little bit even with Town Center North. I think part of what the town has talked with the applicants about in this process is really trying to target, what are those overall improvements, but then they aren't, as I think Rocky had alluded to before, this is, there's a build out time that it takes. So not every improvement needs to happen, with the first CO. It's okay, with the first CO, actually nothing needs to happen. It's when we get to 100 trips, you need to do X. And then when we hit 200 trips, X plus 1. And, so it's one sort of understanding what all those improvements are and then filtering down to when's the timing. And yeah, so, and again, I know we're now talking about just sort of this interim study, and I don't want to
but having that TMP finalized and approved by the state would be sort of like, would identify the high level outcome, correct? And then
that's our hope.
and also perhaps thresholds for mitigation, like you were just alluding to, Jay. So a roadmap of when we hit X, we'll be looking for Y offsite kind of thing.
I think
that's what Section 7 includes.
Yeah, and I would say we're also thinking, as per Jay, a little bit like what we said for the other subdivision, Town North, is monitoring, right? Key part of it, right? How things are going to unfold over time, and implementation is going to be a key part of sort of figuring out what's really needed at what time. And so that still needs to be figured out as part of the TMP, but we think that's an important component.
Yeah, that would be interesting too. Okay, so I just wanted to also point out that, to use your own words, Rocky, from earlier, in thinking about how, or just recognizing that for the subdivision, the subdivision proposal that we just talked about earlier tonight, you've got one large anchor tenant, but also, half a dozen other lots there with potential tenants of their own. You don't know what those are yet. You don't know what kind of traffic drivers those are going to be. And then yet in this, you've tried to not only nail down your own development program, but keep track of everybody else's that's going to be contributing to the network of traffic that you'll be building upon. And so I just want to, again, recognize the work that, it's a lot of forecasting of stuff that nobody really knows about. And these are people trained in how to do that to the best of their ability, but I know that it's really hard. So anyway, in reading through the material and the peer review memos back from, on behalf of the town, I just, again, as someone's familiar with some of these terms, it's a lot of like level of service, E's and F's, a lot of, delays at particular intersections, a lot of recommendations for lengthening turn lanes, adding turn lanes, things like that at multiple intersections. And that's just based on the list of offsite intersections that have been studied. Is that list that's in here? So these are the, hold on, bear with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6 intersections, most of them on Payne Road, Higas Parkway, Holmes Road, Bridges Drive, Muzzy Road, Gorham Road, and then Route 1 at Scarborough Downs. Are these intersections the only ones being studied, or these are just the only ones being looked at in this interim analysis?
Those are the only intersections being looked at in this interim analysis. There are additional intersections that are being looked at as part of section 7. This is sort of a subset of the bigger, larger TMP.
Okay. And then just another sort of data clarification. There was, I think maybe in the town's memo, the one memo referred to 365 trip ends and another one referred to 265 trip ends. I know that a lot of the overall, like the high level trips are much larger than that, but that, I don't know if that was just a typo or which of those two is accurate. Either way, it's a lot of trips. And so in looking at the sort of these preliminary types of recommendations based on a lot of preliminary information, my takeaway was, this is a huge, potentially at full build out, understanding that takes time, a huge impact to our offsite infrastructure network and traffic network outside of this property. Everybody knew that. It's a large lot. So, that shouldn't come as a surprise, but I am curious. I didn't read too much about what might be happening to try and reduce any of those trip numbers. And so forgive me if that is to be covered in more depth in the larger TMP that DOT is analyzing, but just as a board member, I do know that there are certain things that can be done to try and encourage a reduction in trips. And if I were in your shoes, I would assume that you're probably looking into some of those things. So I'm just curious to hear about what some of those ideas might be, and whether or not you maybe it's too early for those to really be effective or not. But I do think with such a huge introduction of trips, you stand to potentially have some creative treatments here that could really help reduce your overall trip impact and therefore a lot of the offsite mitigation.
So it's on our radar. Great question about TDM, right? Transportation demand management, and how can we influence or reduce single occupant vehicles or think about other modes. And so I in fact, I just communicated with Dan about some ideas about that, sort of a framework to a TDM plan that may make some sense here. It's a little bit different because of individual users but conversations related to metro service and other sort of, alternative mode makes a lot of sense in terms of trying to think about how to reduce pressure, on the roadway system.
That's my big question. That, and, I don't know if you've been given a sense for any time frame from DOT on when you might get that. I'm sure you're just as curious as anybody else.
So we've really been very, I'll be honest, thankful that town staff has been open to meeting weekly. I mean, it's demanding for them, quite frankly. And so we're really appreciative of town staff that they're meeting with us on a weekly basis. We really wanted to see if DOT would do that. And it's getting we haven't quite gotten there yet where we're able to meet with them, but we're trying to push that along so that we can have the same sort of progress with them as we're having with the town.
I don't think I have any other specific questions, or I have lots of questions, but.
So, Jay, if I could, what are we being asked to vote on? I think the concept, the overarching concept is not, I like Roger, or I'm sorry, like Rick, would sit here and go, the concept of what they're proposing is fine, but what's
I
the
think
meat
that
of
was
what we're being asked to
I think
vote
that
on?
was really the question. I think in staff's mind, based on our conversations with peer reviewers and our review of the materials, is that again, I think we're generally comfortable with the concept as well. It's down to details and being sure we, have all the information in the packet and on file. And so really, we're just looking to hear from the board tonight is there something, are you also okay with the concept, or is there something we're missing? And Angela, I don't know if if you want to weigh in or if you agree with what I said.
Yeah, it looks like Rocky wants to jump in front of me though.
No, go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, as Tom said, our meeting, I think this morning was extremely productive to get to the end goal here. And I guess I made it pretty clear at that meeting is my goal was coming out of that today with, here's the 3 or 4 things that we see are need to be included to make this package complete. And there were these action items, which we heard from Goral Palmer that we're going to have in our hands by Friday. And with that, I think we were all, including our peer reviewers, our traffic peer reviewers, Bill Bray and John Adams, that I think we were all on the same page and saying, this is definitely where the direction we're going to go. Here's the information we need. Everyone understood that made sense. And that we just needed to get it in our hands and all be in agreement with that. It's really about looking at, while we understand that this, as they said, trips can't be generated until they get that traffic movement permit. There's always, what the planning board is approving is these trips and making sure that there's at least a conceptual, and it could be very rough conceptual look or design, I'll say, of if we go this direction, that this actually can happen. Like, this isn't just pie in the sky. This is, if this happened tomorrow, we actually had some trips, it would make sense. I think it just is, I think a small lift, and what we talked about is being a very, like I said, a very conceptual thing that we can have in the file and show that if these traffic volumes did happen in our town, we would have some idea of what to do about it. I guess there's a couple of failing intersections in particular that we talked about, and those are the 2 that we were focusing on, which was Payne and Muzzy and Payne and Gorham Road. And so having a little bit, wrapping our heads around that and brainstorming through that with the design team and the traffic peer reviewers, I think we all got to the same place. So that's where I'm at.
So for tonight, okay, go ahead, Rocky.
If I could jump in. So what I think the ask, and what, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, or maybe I'm just missing it, but what I think the ask of the planning board is tonight is that you buy into this concept. Right now with the Innovation District, we have a condition of approval that says we have to have our we have to have our DOT permit in hand. And we're telling you right now that we don't have it in hand. We're working on it. We need that condition of approval changed so that it can become tied to COs and not to the starts of some buildings, so that we can get going on this next round of buildings that's before the board. I think that's really is the ask. We've got to deal with that condition of approval. So if the board were comfortable with this concept, if they could authorize the staff and Bill Bray's team, once we satisfy them, which we think we'll have them satisfied by the end of the week, hopefully, that we can continue to move forward. That's the ask.
All right, thanks for simplifying. It does help to simplify it that way. So for what it's worth, I'm okay with the concept as presented. I heard Rick Duperi say the same. Roger Beely, have you had a chance to weigh in on this?
No, I'm satisfied with it also. I mean, it seems to me the risk is on the applicant more so than on the town, so.
Okay. Rachel?
I'm comfortable. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm especially comfortable hearing from the staff about how far along this whole project is, and it is a monster to wrap your head around. I'm looking at the proposed number of trips that essentially we would do locally, the 354 trips AM peak hour. I'm assuming that that's kind of our top, that we would be interested or willing to grant approval up to that number, so that the buildings could start, and the TMP would have to be issued prior to the certificate of occupancy. So is that exactly, what it is? Okay, fine with me.
Thanks, Rachel. Jennifer, are you also comfortable with the overall concept of that?
Yeah, comfortable with that concept, and just wanted to clarify that is until the overall TMP is approved, and then it sort of reverts back to the standard. You'll have approval for any trips. So once after that point, once a site plan is approved, you're just good to go, right?
Correct. There'll be that scorecard that'll keep track of the trips that are permitted and how you keep subtracting from that scorecard.
Okay, yeah, it's really helpful to have that laid out that way. But yeah, I think that does seem like a good, intermediary step to allow some of these things to go forward, given the heavy lift here on the larger permit.
All right, Rick Meinking. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Thanks. All right, so I think, unless I missed it, Jay, Rocky, Dan, and Angela, I think we're all on the same page on that. Do we need a formal vote on it?
I would guess at this time, there's still some more information that we're looking for to be sure that concept can be articulated into detail. And so I guess that's where as I introduced, there's you received our peer review memo, and there's still information that, though conceptually, I think, and Angela can speak more to it as she was in the room, the traffic engineers are conceptually behind. We haven't seen the material. So I think really where staff's at this point is that it's probably not quite ready from our perspective this evening. But once things are queued up, potentially if the board's comfortable, we could see this as maybe a consent item at the next meeting. Unless there's some question, and that's really what we wanted to get at tonight, was there some question that the board feels they're gonna want to see answered above and beyond what's already been flagged by staff and the peer reviewers. Because what we didn't want to do was, as I said, the applicant sort of called about tabling and, sort of said, well, we didn't want to do that, and then show up 3 weeks from now and have board members say, what about? And so if there's any other what abouts, now would be a really good time to hear what those are, so we can be sure we're addressing those, so the board feels comfortable moving forward, once staff gets the all clear, so to speak.
So
I don't have any whatabouts, Jennifer.
So Jay,
is it a hand up or an adjustment?
No, I'm just curious. Jay, the additional concept information that you're talking about is what the town is expected to receive from Gold Palmer this week. So we should have that information prior to our next planning board meeting. Is that what you were intending?
Yeah, with the holiday, I think the submission date has to be on Friday, and that's where they'll get the information in. So it would be in your packet.
Okay, but that is the missing piece that you're looking for.
And in fact, we've already scheduled our next meeting with staff and the peer reviewers to just go through that on, I think the 15th is what we've scheduled. So we've got that all teed up and ready to kind of just to go.
Run through it. Okay.
Rocky, do you have something else?
No, so I was hoping that the board would give the staff direction that if you don't want to vote on it tonight, then at least agree that if we satisfy the staff, we satisfy Bill Bray, that you could put it on as a consent item for the next meeting. That would probably work for us. I just hate to tie up. I know we've got a lot of items coming at you on planning board meetings, and I feel like this is something that can be handled and really doesn't need to come back to the board. But however you want to handle it, obviously, it's up to you folks.
I'm comfortable with the consent item. If staff can work out those details, and we feel like we're on the same page, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Any other board members want to weigh in on that?
Consent item works for me.
Same here.
Works with me and works for Rick as well.
Great. Before we go there, I did forget again, with my excitement, to ask the public if they wanted to speak on this topic. And if you did, please use the raise my hand feature. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Okay, so I think we're on the same page collectively here on this topic. I think that's all we need for tonight. Any other parting questions? No. Good.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. I do show it as 10 o'clock on the dot. Quick board poll. Did you want to try to take up one more, or are we feeling this evening? Don't chime in all at once. I can't hear you. There's a lack of enthusiasm, I feel. All right, so it's 10 o'clock. We're gonna call it for the evening. Now that was a tough agenda, and they're not gonna get easier. I'll say that. But I do appreciate all the effort that's been going in, just from staff, from this board, from the applicants. But I do appreciate it. So with that, we'll table items number 9 through 15. So
Number
next
9.
week, for all of those that waited, we apologize. We are doing our best here. Next, we'll do the staff report. Jay or Angela?
I guess I would just make mention of our workshop coming up on Wednesday night. So thank you for indulging twice. Hopefully that one won't hold you quite as long. It begins at 5:30, as I know you know. Council has their meeting that starts at 7. So we'll have about an hour and a half to talk about the comprehensive plan. There'll be about a 15-minute plus or minus presentation by the Long Range Planning Committee and staff, and then look forward to the discussion. That is, I think, what I have on my docket for a staff comments.
Angela, you have anything?
All set.
All right. Administrative amendment report?
Jamel did not tell me of any, so I don't believe we have any this time around.
Yeah, I don't recall any since the last time we met. Correspondence. Planning board comments. Mr. Beely.
Yeah, I think we really do have to consider maybe having an extra meeting, because we're only getting halfway through these agenda items with all this activity on the downs. And the next 2 items on the agenda they were supposed to be last time, and they were bumped, and now they're bumped again. So I just don't think it's fair to some of these other applicants. We're consuming a lot of time on the downs, and so I'm willing to have an extra meeting to try and clean up some of the stuff.
I think that's a great suggestion, Roger. I do also feel for the rest of the applicants that have been waiting. It'd be nice to get through one whole agenda. That way we can have a clean plate for the next weeks. I'm open to the idea. I'm also grateful for the amount of time that everyone here has been putting in, because as we know, we've been having workshops on other various topics in town, and joint sessions with the town council at times. So it's been a hard row here for the last few months for this board. And so I guess I'll have to, I agree. It's probably something we should do and try to get caught up. How does the rest of the board feel about doing a quick session? A couple of these
this
extra items. You need proper notice, which is it 10 days or 14?
Yeah, I guess, let's, once I get a sense from if the board's willing to entertain it, we need to take a look at schedules and when availability and notice and all that good stuff. So, so we can certainly, staff will work to fit one in for you, but recognizing we have a workshop this Wednesday and then we have a meeting 3 weeks out. I'm not sure if we say tonight we want to have an extra meeting, I'm not sure it'll happen before the next meeting. I don't think.
Maybe in November.
But maybe what we could look at is, doing, so we need to, I guess I'll look first to the board if you're interested in doing that. And if you are, we will look to figure out how we can fit that in.
Let me ask you this, Jay. Do you have a sense of, my sense is that we're going to be seeing more activity on the downs coming right down the road.
Yep. Yeah. I think the Innovation District alone has 50 odd lots, of which I think I said, we're probably reviewed. Maybe 4 or 5 have been approved. We have 3 or 4 already on the agenda. So that leaves us 40 plus remaining in the Innovation District alone. Then, now, Town Center North, I think we heard their focus is primarily on the one larger lot. And so really it's about the Innovation District within the Downs project. But, I'd say we have full agendas. If the Downs didn't exist, we'd be one of the busier towns in the state if we only had the Downs happening. So, we really have a pretty good workload going for you all to help us navigate.
Yeah, this Rachel, I think we need to figure out how to have another meeting. It's not fair. I think in some respects it's really not good service to our community to have people waiting for 2 or 3 meetings just for us to get to them. And I don't see that changing. So I certainly would like to try to clear out as much as possible of even what we've seen, even what we have tonight. And we will, I suppose at some point there'll be a little breath as the weather starts to close in, but then people will start to think about the spring and trying to get their stuff to us. So I don't see an end to things coming, whether it's through the Downs or just some other projects that might be coming through. I think we got to provide that service to the town and the developers and the residents. I think we need to find a way to kind of clear off at least some of our agenda.
Yeah, I agree. I think a catch-up meeting is probably a good idea, but would also, reiterate some of those concerns. Like, this is a great problem to have, right? You have so much going on in your town that all of your planning board agendas are full by double. But also just, a reminder to us all to continue on with conversations like what we had in our last workshop, to the end that, we try and look for any other opportunities we might have to sort of handle any of these reviews in other ways. One of those options being administrative reviews, but if there are other, there might be other tools that we could look at to try and help, because, right, what Roger and Rachel were saying is that so we have a catch-up meeting to catch up with the items that we currently have in, but if you look forward just on the downs alone, there's still, a lot that could potentially be coming. And so I think that it's a good point that we don't want to be the holdup and the bottleneck in this pipeline if we're fortunate enough to have this kind of growth and interest in our community, but we might just need some other ways to do it. That's all.
So I'm just going to throw out a quick idea, and it might be horrible, so just let me know if it is. We have these, we reviewed these projects, that are, we have all the paperwork here, we have staff comments. Part of what takes our agenda sometimes a little longer is, all of the questions we as a board have. Is it worthwhile in a situation like this where we don't get through an agenda that we all take a little time to write our questions and submit them to staff? And maybe staff can relay them to the applicant. So when it comes back next time around, we have written responses to our questions and maybe cut down on some of the, the back and forth that takes place during the course of a meeting. I don't know if that's a great idea or a horrible idea, and it might make it worse, but just something to help make the process move a little smoother, especially as, if you can't finish an agenda out.
It might actually make it worse, Nick, for the staff to be getting.
It might.
It seems to me while the downs are being developed, we might want to consider at least once every quarter having an extra meeting just to try and catch up.
Yeah, it's that if we go back to extending the length of the meetings with.
Well, there's 3.5 hours.
I know we shorten it.
We got to have a nap time in here
We
somewhere.
actually kept the length the same. We just started a half hour early. We used to start at 7 and end at 10:30. Now so we definitely kept the length the same.
Yeah.
All right. But maybe that's the thing is it's, we all have busy lives and we've got places to be. So it's, maybe that's the answer is adding an extra 30 minutes to each agenda. And, that hopefully allows us to take up, an additional item at least. We should definitely think about how we do this though.
So I think I'm hearing general support at looking at another meeting, at least in the short term. And so staff will start working on that, kick some dates around and see what we can do in terms of trying to get the agenda at least caught up before we get to the holiday season, and then take stock again as we go down the line. And, if the administrative review piece that comes along that council has interest in, we had a workshop on how that starts to impact our agendas. We can sort of play it by ear, but certainly unless I hear otherwise right now, I feel like I'm hearing you're asking staff to take a hard look at the calendar and get something on the books.
Yeah, I would just caution that extra meeting would be just to clear what we've got. In other words, nothing new. So that if it's a relatively short, we still get everything cleared, and then the next regular meeting would start with new stuff.
Yeah, I thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I guess that's sort of along the lines of what I was thinking. I'm glad you articulated that. Much like we did back in, what was it, April, May, June, something like that. We said, all right, we're going to start on, on whatever date, and whatever we don't get to, we're going to pick up on the Wednesday. We'll start at 6 o'clock again and give it another 3-hour shot or what have you. So yeah, I think that's a great way of approaching it, because it doesn't introduce a whole nother round of reviews that, so yeah.
Well, what about also maybe just a standing supplemental meeting where if you don't clear it on a Monday, we agree to come back for an extra hour and a half on a Tuesday night. Just as a standard policy.
I sometimes have meetings on Tuesdays. I think all of a sudden I think we're not necessarily going to be easy to find the time, but
Yeah, I think
That's why
we
we have
can
all-
This is
certainly
just a
think
thought.
about those things moving forward. I
For instance, I
definitely
have a
would
meeting
start to get
tomorrow night,
concerned
so I,
about,
I would have to be out, not do it.
Yeah.
yeah, I just
This
want
is-
to
this is
be
just a thought,
sensitive to
but-
member burnout if we do that every week or every 3 weeks, but certainly
Yeah.
something to think about moving forward in terms of how do we address this on a more frequent or how do we address this with some sort of regularity and anticipated regularity rather than trying to catch our tail.
You know, this is just a thought, kind of along the lines of Nick's thought of writing down the questions, but I know every project's different, and some of them are, you know, easier, and some of them are harder, and some have a lot of peer review comments, and, you know, some of them are as thick as a Bible. But like the government, when they are debating something on the Senate floor, everybody has a certain amount of time, and you can yield back your time, or you can use it all. But I mean, we spent over 2.5 hours on that. Well, over 2 hours anyway, close to 2.5 on one subject tonight. And I know it was all good. It was all good, you know, all good. But and maybe we needed to spend all that time on that one. But it just seems to me that sometimes the process could go a little faster. It might just be my impression, but you know, we have to ask the questions. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. Believe me. You know, when I sent that letter out, that email or whatever, that was actually all stuff my wife said to me that was directed at me. And I thought, well, maybe I'll share that with the group because my wife's a pretty smart lady. But those are comments that she made about what I was doing. So I thought, well, maybe is there a way we can speed the process up? Because we could do a catch-up meeting, but we're going to get behind again. The Downs isn't going to slow down for 5 or 10 years. You know, at least 3 to 5. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
You know, I think that's a good point. Maybe it would be a good idea for when the board's questioning that we all have, say, 5 minutes for our initial round of questions. And that way all the board members get a chance to weigh in on whatever their concerns are, and then just go back if board members have additional issues they're concerned with, then they have a chance to do that instead of a board member taking 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And sometimes when you get down to the last board member, everything's been exhausted pretty much.
Yeah, I actually like going last. That way I don't have to, it's a lot easier to go last because, you know, a lot of times everybody else has already asked the hard questions. So, but, you know, I could see the first person.
How do you guys feel about me trying to work with staff on this?
Taking 5 minutes.
Are you guys comfortable with me trying to work on with staff on a solution, whether it's an applicant time limit, whether it's, you know, planning board time limits, you know?
As long as I don't have to
okay with me
refer
trying
to
to figure
people as the gentle lady from Scarborough Hill Road or something like that.
I think we all bring something unique and we all have our own expertise. So I try to stay within my own expertise because there's a lot of other brilliant people on this board that can ask the appropriate questions and get the information. So, you know, from my standpoint, I'm just trying to contribute to what I know and hopefully can help the applicant have a really good facility or plan. So I think some of that stuff you can work out, Nick, with staff and figure out a way to streamline things a little bit. So I'm in favor of that.
All right. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, look, we're all very incredibly intelligent and talented people. So the questions are good. The applications are tougher. So they take time. And you also, we got to be careful not to rush through some of these big decisions because we're worried about how long it takes. And that's the other thing we guard against. We do need to give each application the consideration it needs. So I'll work with staff and see if we can come up with some sort of methodology slash whether it might just be a cleanup meeting. Maybe that's what we end up on, but I'll spend some time this week chirping in Jay and Jamel's ear to see if there's something that we can do. All right. Any other planning board comments for the evening?
I just have one. If you haven't been down to the Innovation District, you ought to. I'm actually going to do a building inspection on the AV Technic building that they put in a variable refrigerant flow system. So there's no combustion going on in that building. It's no carbon, which is a good thing. But I went down there earlier just to get my lay of the land, and boy, there's a lot of work going on down there. It's pretty impressive. That's all.
And you can only get in there basically through Payne Road.
Yeah, that's the only way you can right now. Yeah.
Good tip. Yes, Jeff?
Because we all have oodles of free time. But I did really like the idea actually of a field trip or sorts to go out to the Downs in general, perhaps the Innovation District more particularly, to just kind of get an on the ground look together at, how some of these pieces are coming, fitting together, and particularly like the phasing of some of the infrastructure that they have now and where, Center Street's going to lay out and things like that. I do just kind of think that would be helpful in terms of framing a lot of the future conversations that we know we'll have about those other parcels. I'm not sure when would be a good time to do that, but it did sound interesting to me.
What's neat is if we could take the van or the bus, because we did that with the Brunswick when they got it purchased from the government and all that, and there's all kinds of things going on in the Brunswick, and we actually had a bus tour of that, and they really kind of give you a narrative, and we got a chance to get out and walk on a couple areas, and we could get it done in about an hour.
I don't know how many people we can fit on our bus right now.
Yeah. Well, I know you have to do all that, but I figure, well, even a freaking school bus.
I like the idea. I'm just trying to think. I know that bus is usually pretty small, but if folks are interested in doing a site visit, really we're we're sort of at the critical time for trying to do it before we lose daylight hours and start, we can either look at either Saturday, Sunday morning, or right now we do have the opportunity to do it in the afternoons. So if I see general interest in that, that's another thing staff will start looking at calendars and seeing what we can pull together in terms of having a site visit out there to look, Town Center North is a really good opportunity. I think there's a lot of questions around what was being talked about. So, and then we can see what else is happening, of course.
I like the idea of a site visit. I also want to mention what one of my faculty members was fond of saying, and that is you have to go slow to go fast. And that really, while we took an awful lot of time on Town Center North today, I think what we saw, what we learned, what we were able to work out among ourselves in terms of what it meant and where they were going, adding to that the traffic study, I think that laid the groundwork for us to move a little faster on as some of the buildings come in and some of the next stages come in. So I'd like to go faster in some areas, but I think we need to make sure we keep for all of these projects, we have a firm foundation and then we move fast.
These are all very good suggestions. So,
just one final comment. I thought it was encouraging that they're still talking to Wex.
Now, I haven't heard, has anybody heard anything about the ed?
No, I was wondering about that too.
It's,
About
it's
the what?
not on the plans. It's that.
Yeah,
that
it's a
lot is
sports,
not
sports
there.
complex.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Don't know.
Okay.
We all
Don't
done?
know. Good question for the Downs team.
Let's wrap this up, Nick. I got a comprehensive plan I got to read before I go to bed.
All right, and I have to know if
I got a
that's
football game to watch.
I know it, yeah.
I think the Packers are even winning.
Yeah, well, my husband's a firm Packer fan. He's from Madison, Wisconsin. So, and we've
I've
toured.
been to Lambeau Field. I
Lambeau
lived in
Field.
Wisconsin. I'm a cheesehead.
Yeah, so's he.
All right, folks, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all again. You guys are great.